Okay, we are live on Facebook and we're recording live on Zoom.
All right. Well, we will call the order the Wednesday, November 2nd, regular meeting of the Class at School Committee. Welcome, everyone, one and all. If you are in person or virtual via Zoom, again, Zoom has chat functions, so you can ask questions through Zoom. Facebook, you can watch and listen only. So welcome, everyone. I guess we'll start with the roll call. Mr. Carr.
Present.
Mr. Kearney.
Present.
Ms. St. Ange.
Present.
Mr. McClellan. And I, Lance Dial, present here. So we have a full unanimous committee. And now we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, is there a flag?
Get it right this time.
Oh. I'm gonna let you lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't really have any opening remarks except to say we've got a lot of content on our agenda today and a lot of good academic discussion. So we are going to try and be disciplined through the time as we move forward. So, if you have questions, committee members, unless they're immediately urgent, let's hold them till our assigned time at the end so that we can keep things on a pace. And with that, we will move to public comment. Before we open it up to public comment, though, I will recognize that we did get quite a bit of feedback on the turf situation on Alumni Field. I do want to know that I do want everyone to know that we have heard your comments and your concerns, and that this was not a process that was not thoughtful and consideration of all of our students. At the end of the day, the path we took was the path that we determined that would impact the least amount of student athletes. We are concerned that if we did not act during this window, we would then have to be forced into a situation where we'd be disrupting like almost an entire spring sport. So with that, we looked at there's never a good answer when people have to make sacrifices, and we are sorry for those who do, but at the same time, we think that this is the least impact to all of our Cohasset athletes. So, but we appreciate all of your feedback. And, I will say that, that type of feedback is helpful to keep us honest in what we're doing. So I encourage it. But that said, and with my prior comment about the packed agenda, if you have comments about the turf, please feel free to make them. But, the decision's kind of been made, and, we feel like we did the best we could with the facts at hand. So with that, I will open it up to public comment. Excellent. Hearing none, I think we'll turn it over to our invited guests. Dr. Silva.
Yes, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, I'm very excited to have several invited guests to speak today at the top of the agenda. And the first group that's going to come up are some of our amazing fifth grade teachers who have created a identity unit, which has become not only a major part of the fifth grade experience, but tying very, very closely into our whole experience that we're trying to foster in Classic Public Schools around cultural responsive teaching and around social emotional learning and around acceptance, understanding, and empathy. So without further ado, I see Principal Sullivan over there, and I'll invite Principal Sullivan and invited guests to come up. And Principal Sullivan, I'll let you introduce Karen, Julie, and Kaylee formally, and take it away. And I will get the presentation queued up.
We can sit.
You may sit.
It's a standing presentation.
No, it's
In the middle, right? Thank you, everyone. So I have with me three fabulous members of our fifth grade team. I have Karen Johnston, fifth grade teacher. I have Julie Levine, fifth grade special education teacher, and I have Kaylee Schneider, also a fifth grade teacher at Deer Hill School. And they're representing the entire grade level who all implement this identity unit as part of the kickoff to the fifth grade curriculum. I've had the pleasure this is my fifth year at Deer Hill, watching this grow. It was something that they had already established when I began at Deer Hill, but it's a really responsive curriculum to the needs of students and to just kind of evolving times, while also being very carefully tied to standards and DESE kind of guidelines and things like that. So with that, I'm going to turn to them and let them share what they've come to present to you.
So, can I just put you on pause for a second?
Sure.
I believe folks can hear, maybe it's an issue with that one individual's computer, because we do have our
We asked her to turn up her volume,
microphone on.
not in a rude way, just a question that I asked many students.
I mean, if someone could go onto Facebook and I can't do it when I'm operating all of these things, but if someone could go on and take a peek, that would be helpful, just to make sure that you can hear us.
The alternative is to turn it off and turn it back on. That often works.
Have to turn in the middle.
Yeah, hello? That's fine.
My internet's just slow.
Oh, it's slow, yeah. Okay, well, I believe we're on. I have good faith because we have the green light.
Yeah, so if you are having audio problems, then you can come in through public comment or communicate with one of us and we'll revisit. But without further ado,
You're
I
up.
turn it over to you, and hopefully you're being heard loud and clear. You don't operate under that pretense. I do believe that's the case.
So we are really, as a fifth grade, our standards, our academic standards on reading, writing, social studies, speaking, and listening, all are pretty heavy on perspective taking and understanding the feelings of others, understanding the feelings of book characters, the people throughout history who have had other experiences than us. And in our real lives, our kids, if we actually, sorry, it's hard to not have it in front of me. I mean, they're expected to understand these things. And it's really hard when you're a preteen and don't really have a lot of understanding and experiences outside of Cohasset and what you've done with your family and your own experiences. So what we want at the beginning of our year is for our kids to really be good classmates, good teammates, and be able to effectively communicate with others. And we want to build that classroom community in a place that's accepting and loving and warm, so that our kids are really feeling understood and connected with their teachers and with their peers. Thank you. So again, Cohasset's like this little teeny tiny place, and we need them to start expanding their world to their classroom world, their school world, their bigger communities. So as we're looking to try to get these guys to help to make sense of it all, we decided to start at helping them to make sense of who they are as humans. And really starting to build those relationships and see those connections with their peers. So starting to figure out who they are, working on their own positive identity, building that healthy self-esteem, pride for who they are, and building that confidence in themselves. So we really start to examine at the beginning of the year what makes each kid who they are. And really just kind of reading some books and talking about things as we go through. It's how they recognize other people, recognize how they interact with other people. And we really go slow at the beginning of the year to go fast for the rest of the year, so they can start to have that foundation to apply it to other skills. It helps them, sorry, it helps them to really start to connect with their peers, to recognize the many different facets that, make who they are, and to really recognize and celebrate individual differences within the classrooms and connect with peers and teachers that they may not have connected with previously. Who's next?
Okay. And, just kind of piggyback on what, continuation of what Julie said about, how do we do this, right? Literature. And I think that, going through the past couple of years and thinking about the different kinds of literature and spending a lot of time recognizing that idea and things that we want for ourselves as teachers in our classrooms too, that a lot of the books, we want to be able to think of them as windows and mirrors, which I feel like is maybe a term that's been heard before, but just to kind of repeat that we want kids to be able to kind of look into somebody else's life and somebody else's experience and say, hey, I didn't know this, or this isn't familiar to me, but also for them to see themselves a little bit, or maybe not right away, but just kind of recognize, kind of differences in different people. And like Julie said, not just people in our classrooms, but in our community, and really, really rich discussions around a lot of those. I know for, myself doing this for the past couple of years, every year, the kids continue to surprise me with, just sort of their insight that I, not to,
be judgmental, but maybe I wasn't expecting, right? And so these books we've chosen over the years, and some of them have been added, are, appropriate for elementary level students. And they're all read with a discussion piece. So it's not here, go read this, and it has a lot to do with like kind of sharing out. I just brought along with me one of my all-time favorites, Just Ask. This can get, we're talking a 45-minute conversation, and you wouldn't think fifth graders would necessarily be able to sit there for the whole amount of time, but this book is about every child in this book has a different challenge, a peanut allergy and Down syndrome. So it kind of, runs the gamut of different kinds of challenges, and the students have, oh, hey, I know somebody that has this, or, oh, somebody told me about this, or, just kind of sharing out different parts of their experiences that they've had. So this is one of my own personal favorites. And then we also, kind of take some of the topics and do some little projects if you want to go on to the
I'm
next
so
one.
fine, very good.
Yeah.
Give myself low grades, but I'm gonna get better as we go.
It's very timely. Just kind of different, different ways for them to sort of show who they are. Anything from, different kinds of self-portraits. We do, like one of the beginning activities is an identity locker where, they kind of put in different pieces of themselves, and it could be pictures from home. It could be just, images from the internet. One of a writing piece that we do with them is about the origin of their name. I actually decided to change it up this year and do their last name as opposed to their first name. And it was really interesting because that was a part of the discussion that they had at home. Like, where does my name come from? So it just added another little twist to it. But those are just kind of some of the sort of hands-on projects. Oh, and the poem. I'm sorry. No, we do more. And so it's kind of the culmination. We have a couple of activities we do sort of as we get through all of the different topics. And one of them is a Where I'm From poem that has a structure that has already been set up for them. But for them to kind of reflect on, all different parts of who they are and their lives, and, kind of weaves in, traditions and things like that. Things that are important to them. So that's another piece of writing that we do. It's creative writing.
So this actually started with, I don't think we mentioned this yet. It actually started with the three of us when we all worked in Karen Johnson's class. And it's become something much bigger, and it's become a part of the entire fifth grade team. And so all the fifth graders get to experience this. And what we wanted to do is this would be the fourth group of students that we have that have had this experience and have read all of this literature and have these discussions. So we wanted to reach out and see if anyone would be willing to share about their experiences, whether it was a past student that we had or a family member. So we reached out and we did get some responses. And they just wanted to share some of their experiences they've had, and some of the most memorable pieces and things that they learned and carried forward into their lives now. So if you want to play the video.
I remember learning about identity, and one of the most important things I learned was that there is more to a person than you think there is. I remember my friends telling me about their identities, and even though we had a lot in common, we also had a lot of differences that I was not aware of. One of the most memorable activities we did was making an identity map. Here's mine. As I wrote down information on my identity map, I realized how much I still have to discover, decide, and learn about myself. It is important to learn about identity because then you are more educated and aware about yourself and the people around you. I remember this lesson about identity from fifth grade because it is one of the most important things we have ever learned about.
Like my classmates, I learned a lot from them as well through this project because I didn't know everything about them. And some of the things that they had and some of their experiences were similar to mine, but also different. It really helped me on my way into middle school, also, like finding myself and looking at myself and seeing all the many, many good and bad experiences that I've had.
Looking back to 5th grade, we did a lot of projects, and we read a lot of books on this topic. One of my favorite books that we read is called Jack, Not Jackie, which is kind of funny because my name's Jack. This book was very interesting because it talked all about a family, a mom, a dad, and 2 sisters. The main character, Jackie, grew up to be a boy and changed his name to Jack. But at the end of the story, the girl who doesn't understand Jack's gender realized that Jack is the same as Jackie. They're the same person, and she loves Jack no matter what he is. Something else that we did for this unit was our Where I'm From poster. This was a great gift from my parents because it talked about, you guessed it, where I'm from. This poem literally brought my mother to tears. That was one of my most memorable things from 5th grade. It's important that you learn about your identity because your identity is what makes you you and nobody else can tell you otherwise. The topic of identity is important to talk about early in your life because it can bring people together and create new friendships.
And it wasn't just me I figured out. I learned my friends' identities, my classmates' identities. I formed a bond with everyone when I truly understood them. I knew who they were on a deeper level.
We got to talk about ourselves, and once we did those, I felt more comfortable knowing who I was. So I think it was really fun to know, what other people were capable of, because then you got to, become friends with them and know what they like, and sometimes that's good to know about a person.
I learned a lot about myself doing this project, which I recently just found. I thought it's important to learn about identity because you really just don't sit down and think about who you are as a person and who other people are.
The most important thing I learned about identity came from the book Yo Soy Muslim. I learned to respect differences and respect ourselves.
In learning about identity, our family found it so important for our son to understand the concept of identity and the identity of others in the classroom in order for him to be more accepting and understanding of the people around him and in our ever-changing world. In reflecting on the classroom work, the most memorable pieces were the lessons that he brought home to our whole family. He showed us how to model gender-inclusive language and behavior. We discussed how to better recognize harassment and our reaction to it. The lesson gave us all tools to act in non-discriminate manner for our gender-diverse friends, family, and future interactions.
Great job.
So as you could see, there are 2 kids that
I remember learning about identity.
That's great.
Okay. that actually had their identity maps with them, which I feel like is just telling to how much this can impact a child, even an adult. I actually brought my identity map, so a little bit bigger than theirs because I am older. But I feel like this experience, not only is important for our students, but it's also important for everyone. And I think this is something that really anyone can do and reflect on. We started out the beginning of the year by having these conversations and building these relationships with our students. And by me, and as well as our other teachers, by sharing our own identities with our students, we're so much more connected and we build such positive relationships with each other and just open doors that I feel like wouldn't otherwise be open. So I want to encourage you guys to think about your own identity and even maybe consider making your own identity map. It was a lot of fun to reflect and dig deeper about myself too, and get to have the opportunity to learn about my students and share that with them as well. It's really cool too to show the kids over the years how our maps have changed too as adults. Like I made one 4 years ago and now there's things that don't belong on there anymore. There's things that are totally changed. And it's really neat for them to see that these things are ever evolving and you will always evolve as a person. And you should evolve as a person. That's a good.
One of the things I really love about, thank you. One of the things that I really love about this particular unit is we talk about with cultural responsive teaching is that every student should see themselves as part of the classroom community. So we do a lot to make sure they connect. And this is such a great way to do that through the identity lockers and through the whole classroom filled with this. It really brings a warm feeling of acceptance and understanding and just people learning about other people in many, many ways. So it's just a wonderful connection in that way. So I want to thank you for bringing that to West Public Schools. It's great. I think it has quite a positive impact on students and I think families too. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for us.
I'll turn it over to the committee. Any questions, comments, thoughts? So I'll start with you, Mr. Carr.
I think this is terrific. I wish I did this when I was in fifth grade. Still haven't figured it out, but really wonderful. I think this is a great, it's the right, I was in the fifth grade in the 80s, and so different time, but I think this is a great exercise for you to do.
Okay.
Just reminding how we're so lucky to have teachers. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sandwich.
Okay. I love this unit and I love that my child is experiencing this unit right now. And I just think the fact that you all show how you are changing and evolving and the unit's changing and evolving is so important for kids to see, things, especially in the upper elementary going into middle school, seeing like, hey, it's different and things change and it's okay. And we're gonna go in this direction this year, even though I know my big brother did this 2 years ago. It's really, I think, just an important lived experience to go through that. And I also just love the collection of books that you have all curated. It's a really delicious selection. As a reading specialist, I love a lot of them, and they make you teary, right? So thank you all for continuing to do that. It's awesome.
Mr. McCollum?
Yeah, Principal Sullivan, you might have mentioned this in the beginning. How long is the unit? How long is it?
I'm gonna let them respond to that. I think different teachers sometimes sample different aspects of it, but I mean, and in some ways it's ongoing throughout the year. Yeah, it launches and then it becomes this thread that really travels throughout the year.
So how long does it take to create that? Do they create the maps or the trees or whatever you want to call it throughout the entire year, or is that like a certain time you do that?
We might give them a chance to do a sloppy copy and then they'll make a really nice looking one that they're very proud of. And then those then can become a place to springboard off of for a writing assignment or whatever it is. So it's kind of like something to just have with them as a tool later on. So maybe that's 1 or 2 days.
And how do they do it? Like, what is all this? What is all this written on there? Not exactly what's written on there.
That's right, Greg McCullen in the middle.
I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah.
what these things
Yeah.
are.
I think for adults, obviously, it's much more complicated. So when we show them ours, they're like, oh, no way, we don't have that many pieces. But then it's interesting when they start to really kind of explore, even if it's like, oh, my dad's family, my mom's family, like different parts of their lives. And, for some kids, they have, different houses, right? Like they have, different places that they call home, and then they have different experiences there. And so we kind of encourage them to really write it all down, right? Like for us, it's like different, I think of it as like different portions of our life, right? But for them, it's all connected. But so some of them kind of start off on it and then they sort of put it aside. And then if we, hey, take out the identity map, add some more things. And, because when they first sit down, it's overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming for an adult to try to make one of those. And, but it's really, eye-opening and really eye-opening for the kids to see ours.
It must be really nice when they not only are they exploring differences, but they start to see similarities. And that's an important tool in building empathy. And, I also think there's a beauty to having this in fifth grade because they're on the cusp of moving into middle school to a much bigger building, to a whole set of growing that they're doing physically, emotionally. And, having been a middle school principal, I'm very aware of that, what that entails. So I just think it's a really nice springboard into that.
And it's that social emotional learning, right? So important in our standards, really push that, also push the cultural responsiveness of that. I also, the books, just love the books. But it's so important because it's so connected. It's not just a standalone. It's a unit that, as they said, it actually goes out throughout the whole year, but it's interwoven with all sorts of aspects. Because if you really looked at someone's map, it's connected to who they are, there's social studies, there's science, there's writing components to this, there's reading components. So it's really all tied in to what we do. And obviously means a lot for the students because some of them have their maps, but I was just so impressed with their descriptions and how clear they were about how it impacted them.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And I want to tie back to what Julie said too about just that anchor to perspective taking. That's so important to the fifth grade curriculum in social studies and literature, in even in science when you're kind of arguing fact versus perception and things like that. And so it really does have those strong curricular ties as we start to look at what does it mean, what do we mean by history and who wrote it and what is that perspective, and it comes along and these kiddos are coming from fourth grade where they're having that exposure a little bit with their Teach from the Shore kind of, and so they're starting to dabble in it, and then it really anchors in fifth grade.
Katie, we're all gonna get to know you really well.
So the reason I was curious, I'm just, if you were instructing me how to do this, like, what would you tell me to do?
We've done it in a couple different ways. Last year, I did a grade level, so with the whole grade level at once. And it was intense, and showed them my map and kind of went through my map and kind of gave them like my whole story. And I put my pictures in a slide deck and went through like, this is, I was born here and this is kind of what I did, but then I showed them how it connected through different parts of my life. The kids always, I have some scars on me from a car accident. Kids always ask where they're from. So that's kind of like a big deal. I tell them that. And we kind of talk about how that story for me becomes more connected because I ended up meeting one of the police officers who became really close over time. So looking at how all of those different things are really connected in your life. So they kind of start to web out and they take it and it's like, oh, I do this with my brother. I do this with my sister. At this house, this is what I do. I hate reading. I hate, and they kind of start to make connections to things that they love, things that they don't love. But after we've built up over time and had those really great conversations about all of those other aspects of who they are, it kind of just pours out, which is really cool to see.
Sure. So
To add on to what Julie was saying, I think the literature guides our approach to it. We talk about the different aspects that make up identity, such as where you're from. We have a bunch of literature and books that we share with the class and we have discussions over. So over time, we're also building self-awareness, and through those books and topics, we help guide them to exploring their own identity, answering all of those questions. They all look very different too.
it's a really interesting concept. I think it's probably, I think probably the students benefit a lot from it. It's really interesting. How long, when did we implement it for the first time? When we started doing this?
So I thought you had done some of it before I came, but it sounds like it was.
We started 4 years ago.
Okay, so
I went to a year-long PD that year that I participated in for teachers from suburban districts, and there were districts from across the state, and we met in Boston. And our first meeting was in September. I went to the meeting and came home to these guys. I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. We're supposed to try to help these kids how can we help these kids to recognize that there's a world outside of where they live? So we talked a lot and we started to implement different pieces that I could go back to the group and get some feedback on, really look at things. And that's kind of how it grew into place. It was really neat seeing it evolve.
So the first students who benefit from this are now freshmen?
2019, no,
They're
so
eighth
maybe
They would be
graders.
graders.
Fifth graders.
And it was interesting, so when we kind of put it out to, certain parents and families and things, and the kids, and the majority of the responses we got back were from the eighth graders. And so we thought that was kind of cool, because that was, it was the three of us, it was, 2020 that year too, which I think looking back, we had such a strong bond with that class. we did a, holiday Zoom the year after, like and so because we had that experience with them, even though, March 2020, had its aches and pains, but that group, we knew them really well and they knew us really well. And so I think there was
And that was the year too, then it was March 2020 when we were when we were home, that we did our March Madness book brackets and we did the theme Windows and Mirrors. So then it became a school-wide thing and actually I read books and we had guest readers, Julie read books. And so we were doing like a March Madness, like book competition with that theme. And so the whole school actually got to read some of those books at that time and then vote on them. And so we made it more of a school-wide
Yeah, I
thing
think
that
it's really
year.
powerful to see the eighth graders still had some of theirs. That's really interesting. I think in addition to, encouraging like acceptance, I think it can also maybe instill some self-confidence in people. But it might have the opposite effect too. If you encounter situations where students are reluctant to like engage in this and share a lot about themselves at that age, or how do you address that? If that has been encountered.
Yeah, I think, any discussion that we have and any sort of information that we put out there about the kids is it's not, you don't have to, like some kids, even with the identity map, like they did a draft of it and they put it away. And we always said to them too, this is this is private too. This isn't like I'm gonna post it up, like the self-portrait, right? There's certain pieces that, kids want to keep to themselves and that's respected. And that's obviously a message that we give them, that it's respected, because for sure that there's, a level of comfort. So we show them that respect.
Respect. She's not here bypassing her. But I just really, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing all this. I was really curious. It was really interesting. I actually didn't know. I had no idea we did this, and I think it's really, really interesting. So, and obviously, I think a lot of students probably feel strongly about it. The eighth graders are coming back and want to comment on it. It was memorable. That's what we're looking for, right? Memorable learning experiences that stick with them in whatever value or whatever way they extract value from it in their own personal way. Thank you. Sorry for taking all that time.
No, it's good question.
We have a comment too when you're ready.
All right, let's do comments.
Ashley Cleary from 209 Sawyer Street.
Who's that?
Thank you so much to the fabulous fifth grade teachers, the Deer Hill leadership, and the district leadership for enabling our students to participate in an important learning opportunity like this. I, like Miss St. Ange, am the mother of a fifth grader who is having a great time creating her identity map and is very excited to see Ms. Schneider on the screen. And also many thanks to the students and grown-ups who shared the impact of this unit in that wonderful video. We feel very fortunate to be members of the CPS community.
Thank you, Ms. Caleri, and it's fitting that you preceded me because that's what we did for the prior year. So I'm glad you're still watching and joining us. So thank you all for the presentation. I really enjoyed seeing from the kids, because at the end of the day, we talk about some abstract concepts, but seeing how the impact is on the children and the students is really impressive. A couple of things I wanted to ask about, because some of the feedback I got when this was first announced, there were some parents who didn't quite understand what was going on. And the way I'm digesting this is that this is a way for us to teach our kids early on kind of perspective, understanding who you are, understanding how that fits in, and then reading a story and trying to fit into the shoes of people and trying to understand their different perspectives of history. And it's a very valuable and powerful tool. But there are people concerned that how does this work with, certain values? How do you make sure that, you're not pushing one or making people who feel one way or have certain values feel insecure or not part of it? How do you keep it inclusive as you're doing this and not presupposing that there's a right and a wrong and everybody is together? What tools do you use to make sure that everyone feels like they can share and be part of this?
I think for me, every year there's, kind of discussion around, well, what if this or what if that? And, I think just that idea of recognizing that, here's a story about this kid and this family, right? And, the information is about, this one particular family, but also that idea of, thinking about that, you may not know a family like that, or you may know a family like that, but also recognizing that everybody's feelings about whatever it is count. And people have stronger feelings than they do for certain topics than others. And that everybody's feelings and opinions on things matter. And in our mind, we might think, oh, that's right or that's wrong. That's our personal opinion. You know, and I think fifth graders, this is where they're kind of starting to understand like this, you know, this stays in the bubble, right? The bubble thought, and I can have this thought. It's okay, I have that thought. But, you know, thinking about, you know, kind of sharing out. I certainly have had experiences where kids, you know, are, you know, asking pretty pointed questions, and, you know, that's not for me as their teacher to answer. You know, so we kind of, you know, like we said about the books being chosen really purposefully, that we can use those stories to kind of help us guide through that, because you're right. You know, that's something that, you know, like different families and different kids have their own thoughts and feelings on things, and they count too.
And I think that the fifth grade team does a beautiful job, you know, and over the years, every year we've had, I would say on average, 2 families that ask, you know, can we come in and have a deeper conversation about this? And I think that the teachers are always really receptive to that, and it's always had a very positive outcome. And I think the teachers also recognize too that, you know, there's always that point in any conversation, whether you're talking about, you know, again, a historical context or you know, fictional literature, where you say, you know, that's a great question. And I think that would be a really great question to bring up at your dinner table at home. And so teachers are really good at deflecting when it kind of falls into that line of making sure that, you know, this isn't the proper forum for that conversation. But again, doing that in a way that acknowledges the question as a valuable question.
I wish I could do that better.
It's an art.
Can I make a point about that? Because I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Dial, but what I want to make clear, there's sort of a distinction between, you know, certain lessons in this particular unit. I mean, this unit is about identity, right? So, I mean, people need to understand that what we're certainly trying to communicate to the students is that, you know, what someone is or isn't really isn't up for debate, and you don't really get to, you know, you can have your own opinion about that, but I think what we're trying to teach them is like tolerance and acceptance and understanding, right? So about this person's identity, there's also that's I think distinguishable from lessons that might expose kids to different concepts for the first time. Like I saw one of the books there was like Frankie's Father's a Feminist or something like that. So just use feminism as an example for no particular reason. I think it's important that in the district, we are equipping our students with the materials that they need or the resources they need in order to be exposed to all these topics like feminism, but more to just arm their perspective and allow them to form their own opinions, okay, about things so that they're well informed. I think that's sort of what the strategic plan is aimed at. So in that sense, and I understand a family being guarded about that, like, well, we don't believe in feminism, and like, why are you pushing that on our kids as if that's the way to be, right? That's the right thing. Well, then we're not doing that. I hope, and that's my understanding, and from having participated in the strategic planning process and the school committee for the last 4 years, what we're trying to do is just expose them to these concepts so they're able to formulate their own perspectives in a more informed manner, as opposed to someone who is saying that they are a feminist for whatever reason. Well, that's great. Mr. Carr is a feminist, and that's him, and now I know about that. And if I'm a feminist too, then maybe I have something in common with Mr. Carr. If I'm not, then maybe I have a different point of view than Mr. Carr, but maybe we can reach some constructive solution by combining our 2 different opinions. I just want to make it clear that, you know, I don't want the district to ever be imposing any particular concepts on the kids. I don't think that's what this unit is really doing. It's sort of, I think empowering students to have a little bit more self-confidence about their own identity, but also allowing them to learn more about others. And then there's units, and I'm not saying this is what you're getting at, Mr. Dow, but I was having these thoughts, and you're sort of hitting on what I was thinking. And I just want to make that clear, because I feel like some families might be at home thinking that this is sort of maybe overstepping boundaries. I don't think it is, for the reasons that I stated. So I just wanted to sort of articulate that.
No, that is some of the feedback that reflects some of the feedback that I heard, and you know, people are guarded, and of course nowadays everything is so third rail polarized, and so everybody finds demons where there aren't demons, and so I really appreciate what you guys have put together. I had a conversation with Ms. Henry, and she did a great job explaining exactly what you just did. So it's a consistent message across the fifth grade. But there were people who were concerned, like, are you trying to say that, a person is an identity and assigning an identity? You are this. And as opposed to letting people explore, as we learned here in this presentation, this is about exploring. This is about developing. This is about being attuned to what questions to ask. And I think that is a great skill. I think it's great that we're doing it at fifth grade. I think the kids are obviously, so what we saw on the screen, really appreciative of it. I think that helps open their mind. So I very much appreciate you coming and talking to us. Any other questions from the committee?
That was a really important point, Mr. Chair. Thanks for bringing it up. I think people really feel strongly about it.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you for having us, because I think we love that you brought that up, because, elephant in the room, right? And it's important to make that distinction that you just made. That's what this is about, and we always appreciate questions.
You brought the prompt.
I didn't even know that. We really appreciate, we appreciate the transparency about it and being able to talk about it, because it's something that we feel is really valuable.
Thank you all
Thank
so
you.
much for your
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good night. I was trying to stop with them, but it sounded like I was on the front.
It's both. It's well placed.
Full.
All right, so on to
Yes.
a model UN. So this isn't a real UN trip. This is a model of a trip. I don't know. We'll learn more.
This is certainly a real trip, wonderfully, wonderful tradition. I'll ask Mr. Welsh and Mr. Levisi, Mike Welsh, Chris Levisi, members of the Social Studies Department, to come on up, and they have been long time model UN advisors, to my knowledge.
Yes.
And have done a fantastic job, including weathering a snowstorm. It was 2 years ago now?
Last year.
Last year, which was a very memorable trip. So I know you're familiar with this. I'm going to let Mr. Levisi and Mr. Welsh take it from here. And they're looking for some acceptance for this trip moving forward.
Yes, so far approval, we're hoping to bring our students to the National High School Model UN Conference, which is in New York City in March. It's a conference that we've been to several times now. And we found it's a great opportunity for the students to go there. The past few years, in the past, they were able to go into the UN, into the United Nations. That, we had one virtual year where obviously that didn't happen in last year. It didn't happen as well. We're hoping that they'll open that up to us as well. But yeah, if you have any questions about the program itself, we can certainly answer it.
I'll start, Mr. Carr.
So my son Clayton went on this before, and he had a great time. He was well organized. And got him to behave, which was good. And he learned a lot from it. And he's gotten involved, I think, in things in college because he had a great experience in this program. So congratulations on it. I think it's a wonderful program. It's about the tools we can put in the toolbox around here, and this is a great one to have. And it looks like you move a long time, so thanks for doing it.
Mr. Kearney.
Yes, this is wonderful. I believe my two daughters.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And I told them I'm not gonna vote for it unless they clean their room. I might have to abstain.
Kind of a model UN there.
Yeah, so they're psyched, we're psyched. It's a little nerve wracking, 5 years away, so.
It's not 5.
4.
They might have been pulling.
We won't leave any behind, I promise you. It's Wednesday to Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be
It says Friday, March 10th
4 days.
or Wednesday, March 15th.
Yeah, we're going on,
Those are the two
we're
different
going
dates
on
that are listed.
the Wednesday.
Yeah.
The second of the days, just because we found sometimes we have to walk to the UN, and it's the later in the year, the less chance of snow. We've had some snowy years.
And New York is great, and the experience.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Jones.
I fully support any trip that takes students away from their families and away from town. I think it's great to broaden horizons and be independent and be problem solvers. So
have a great time. I also love chaperoning trips, so I envy you guys. It's like going places with high school students is super fun, I feel. So enjoy the heck out of it. What a great experience for everybody. Thank you for doing this.
Mr. McCollum.
Mr. Welch and Mr. Luisi, first, thank you both for what you do. I've had the benefit of watching both of you teach, and you're both assets to the school district, so thank you. In addition to being moderators of the Mile United Nations Club, which you're looking at a former Secretary General of the Boston College High School, Mile United Nations. So I benefited from this program and went on several of these trips, and they're extremely valuable from an educational perspective. What country did we get this?
We haven't received that country yet. Yeah, so we're not quite in the research stage and moving on.
Okay. so
Last year was Turkey and Denmark for this conference, so I have that right?
Yeah.
That's not bad. I mean, I assume
moving our way up.
Security Council countries, but nevertheless, those are pretty good, robust countries to have for this. So that's exciting. I always ask the same questions for so everyone has heard me ask these things for these trips. I'm just always concerned with security and keeping the genders apart, for the overnight trips. So how many? I apologize if it is in here, but is it just the two of you going?
The two of us going.
For chaperone, it's for
We
adults.
may have, my wife might come as well. We might get a Corey to come as well. There's to have a female there as well, kind of make a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
Just in case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are the rooms set up with the girls and boys, and how do you guys make sure they're in their own rooms?
We do, we set them up, obviously, in separate rooms. We don't have a choice of where the rooms are. They do that, but we do room checks at different times during that time. It's also, the conference itself also provides people within the hallways as well to make sure that there's not a lot going on. So, can't guarantee anything, obviously, with the adolescents, but we try to stay on top of things, even though they have some freedom during the day. They're very busy, sometimes until like 11:30 at night, 12 o'clock at night, so that always is beneficial as well. Both between us checking in on them and the conference organizers themselves who maintain the hallways. We feel that we do the very best we can.
That's excellent. Thank you for those responses. And I know this isn't your first rodeo, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if there was a female chaperone there. So if your wife can't do it, I would really like to find a female staff member.
We think so. We have asked Mr. Scott if that would be okay, and he said that would be a person that would be good to do that, as long as everything's there. So, and we thought the same thing, especially with such a large group, that having a third person that would make a difference.
Yeah, but especially I think, from different gender, especially with the room checks and everything, I think it'd be more appropriate. So I'd really like to see that happen.
Okay.
That's all. So, but thank you.
We'll try, we'll do the best we can. If that doesn't work out, then we'll do our best to make sure that we will take care of that.
Yeah. Okay. It's kind of important to me personally that we do that. But I understand it's not easy to find people to come. But thank you both for what you do. I really appreciate this. I mean, this is huge. This is great things. These sort of things are great. Where was the one with the snowstorm?
That was Harvard Model UN in Copley.
Okay.
And so it was kind of, as crazy as it was, we were checking back and people lose power and this and that. And we're in the Peru, perfectly warm and restaurants. So we kind of timed it okay. We didn't want to humble brag about how good we had, but it was not a bad thing, actually.
Yeah.
At one point, I think Ray was putting chains on. the
Yeah, Ray
gets
gets 2 thumbs up, absolutely.
Sure.
Just wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right.
That was
Yeah,
interesting.
that's
We
awesome.
didn't know if any place would be, if they could get the buses cleared for us or
Sure.
anything like that. So it was, we're very thankful to him helping us.
Thank you.
So a couple things I don't think are in here. What's the cost and how do we finance it?
The students pay for the conference. The cost, we don't have a set price at this time, actually, because the hotel rooms aren't set up. So there's a fee for the trip. There's we have to pay for the bus, so we do get a bus down there. And then in addition to that, we have to pay for the hotel. And until they give us back like all the prices and all the taxes. So we haven't figured that out yet. So usually what we do is we ask for a deposit at this point, and then in the past, it's been somewhere around $600 something, we're not sure with the bus costs and fuel and the hotels, we're not quite sure about that. So that is a little bit of something we feel, we don't have complete control over, but it's usually somewhere around $600 to $700 for the trip.
And is the goal 41 students?
So we have presently.
Yeah, that's what we do. So we sign them up. This conference in particular, we like because they'll actually guarantee us as many slots as we want to bring up to a certain amount. So we can sign up in the spring, and we had 41 students who actually wrote a position paper for us to see if they were really interested in doing it. And they wrote these papers for us. So they've all been interested in going, and we haven't had anybody drop out. So we have 41 slots and 41 students who pay deposits.
Yep. And how does that compare to prior years as far as size?
Well, and it's, some years we have done two, and so the numbers may be smaller for a conference, but this year, I think 40 or so is about right for
All right, a
total.
little bit on the higher end, but it's consistently a number similar to that.
Because what I'm getting is that seems, I don't know, but that seems like a lot for two chaperones. And so I'm going to echo Mr. McCullen's suggestion. We would like to see a female chaperone, with your wife or someone else. I'm not sure I have a dog in the hunt of who it is, but just to kind of spread out a little bit of the supervision and also have, really to have same gender supervision.
I think it's very safe for us to say you can assume that we'll take care of that. If that's something that you want, we'll make sure that happens.
Right.
And we'll go through the administration. And everything.
So I understand you're looking for a approval from the committee.
Yes.
So we would, I'd entertain a motion to approve the trip. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Carr. We'll just do a no roll call vote. Just vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Enjoy New York.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support.
And if you do have trouble getting another supervisor, come back to us.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get some.
All right. Thanks for all you do. Have a great night.
You too.
Great. All right. Moving on, now I think we have another invited guest. Ms. Bodell coming to talk to us about as the chair of the Alternative Energy Committee, talking to us about the electric school bus project that's been going on. We have met with you a couple of times before, so happy to hear where things are going.
Very good. I think we are coming to fruition after a year of effort. My name is Tanya Bodell. I'm the chair of the Alternative Energy Committee, and I'm joined by two of the members of the committee. We have 7 members on the committee, so this does not create a quorum. But do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
I'm Debbie Cook. I'm relatively new member, been there for a couple of years. Proud to be a member because I think we're doing some exciting things.
And Debbie is our secretary, which is why our minutes are so amazing.
I'm Steve Winter, a long-time member of the committee. I'm very proud of what the committee has been able to do. It's great things for Cohasset.
So we're here to talk about the electric school bus demonstration project. We had been in discussions with NLX, who had already received grant money. We realized we needed to take it out to a competitive procurement. Did that in the summer, looked at the different offers. There were 2 submissions, one from a bus company, one from NLX. And by far, the NLX offer was far superior on all levels. And came in at where we expected it to come in. Our goal, I think you may recall from our presentations, was to try to match the price of a diesel bus so that it was at least the same lease price. And they have thrown in a lot of goodies that actually make it less costly than leasing a diesel bus, but I defer to the schools on that specifically. But I think especially with inflation, as schools go out to release the buses, this is a competitive option that gives us information about electric school buses. At some point, they're going to be mandated by the state, 100%. Certain about that because the state is going towards a net zero goal by 2040. Electric school buses are going to be a part of that. I think this is a great opportunity for the town of Cohasset to come in early, run it, take the information. But of course, it's up to the school committee in the schools logistically and making sure it works for you. But I think we've done as much as we can do, and then there are additional details to work out, but that is part of our handoff to you. So we'll just go through what we know and what we have, and of course, anybody who has comments or questions, we're happy to answer. Next slide. Yeah, there's a lot of automation, so just keep, tapping. We've been doing this since October. You've seen us, as I said, in June, we put out a procurement request for proposal. We evaluated those over the summer into the early fall. And by October, we had the recommendation. And so we are here today. We have gone, the Alternative Energy Committee reviewed and recommended to, so we don't have any authority to do anything. We can just recommend. we can go pull together the opportunities, but we just recommend. So the Alternative Energy Committee unanimously recommended to, made a motion and recommend to the town, meaning the schools in the town, to proceed with this opportunity. So that's our recommendation. We took this to the Capital Budget Committee. They did not feel comfortable voting until the school committee voted, but they gave a straw poll opinion, and the 3 members were in favor of this. I thought it was very helpful. And then last night we presented to the select board, and again said this is for the schools to decide, but hopefully if they move forward, we'll be bringing this back to you for approval. So it is a school committee and school decision. Next. And I think I just walked through all of this, the different conversations that we've been having with the different committees. I just want to touch again, we mentioned this last time, the EPA under the infrastructure bill has $5 billion to support electric school buses. 500 million was just awarded at the end of October. It is important for us to move quickly on this to get in front of that line. I think we are positioned to get in front of that line, but if we want to do this, we have to make a decision now. It also is clear from the way this first 500 million rolled out that the town of Cohasset is last on the list of the type of town that we're going to give some of this grant money to. But we're not impoverished. We don't own our buses. They're not over 10 years old. Those are the criteria. So you can imagine the communities that need that money. But what we have done is been able to pull together a demonstration project that gives us grant money. And I think being innovative like that is how this town is able to proceed. And that's what our committee's been focused on. We can keep going. So this just shows you where we are compared to the prioritized communities. Right, we're just a very fortunate town. Okay, you can keep going. So NLX presented to this committee. Their offer is very consistent with what they talked about. The next slide is going to have some of the specifics about the pricing and what's included. But basically, it's very consistent with what they told us they were going to try to do. And I will say on their behalf, they do manage 1,500 electric buses. They acquired Enernoc, which was a Boston-based demand response company. And so part of their game is to see if the buses can participate in that wholesale market, the ISO New England market. And they're very motivated to do this as a demonstration project. That's why we're getting such a great deal. Next. So what did they offer? Oops, go back. You could, yep, great. So just to put in perspective, the cost, full in cost of a diesel bus, this town doesn't own, it has some backup buses, but I think is going out to lease a fleet, is my understanding. But the cost of a diesel bus is around $125,000 to $150,000. Cost of an electric bus is 2 to 3 times that. And yet with grants, NLX was able to bring the lease cost down to the level of the current lease cost that the schools have, and have thrown in all maintenance over the terms of the lease and all fuel, meaning the electricity. Plus, they worked with National Grid to be able to get the charging facility and have that installed at no cost. So at the end of the day, this is a better out-of-pocket deal than the diesel bus. We try to make these no-brainers for everybody, just so we can proceed. at some point it's gonna stop, but right now we're in a money machine. Go forward with these types of opportunities, and so we're trying to get as much of this as we can. I think the reasons to do it are fairly obvious. It's also very good for the environment. I mean, we focus on two types of green on our committee. One is the green of the money, but also green for the environment. And that's very important. And that's very important for a lot of the people in this town. And I think thinking about children who are walking around the buses to not have to be sucking in the diesel fumes is a good thing. There's logistical challenges, and I think school staff and superintendent can talk about those. Again, we're agnostic. Our job is to bring you the opportunity. Hopefully it works. But I think all of the challenges that were raised during the conversations, and Susan has been a wonderful person to work with, I think we have a solution to all of those. So we have backup plans to the backup plans. Obviously, the parking is still an issue, but this is one bus. We have the town offering a spot. We feel like everything is surmountable, but again, the schools are the ones who have to deal with the logistics. So we defer to you on this. Okay. We can let the schools talk about this, but we think the parent concerns, the electric buses have proven to be very safe. Next, the parking, we have a solution for the one bus if there's not a fleet-wide solution. The charging station would be part of that parking, and it's a level 2. So if the bus does change location, the level 2 charger can be used for any car. And then as far as scheduling, we are a little behind. Our hope was to be able to get it running by September. I think the next step, if you choose to proceed, would be for the schools to start working directly with NLX to try to finalize what the bus looks like, what are the bells and whistles, and what's the timing. But I think the important thing is try to get in before the rush. The the bus companies are ready to start putting together like $1 billion to $1.5 billion of bus orders. So they're ready to start producing. I just would encourage us to get in front of that rush.
Just one quick question on it. So schools have the priority use of the bus.
Yeah, so
What
when
does
the
that
bus is here, you can use it as much as you want. So when it's not being used, NLX will be able to sell it into the grid. That's the point of the demonstration project, is to see if the bus battery can be used to offset, well, actually it's not a two-way at this point because that's not the type of charger they're talking about. But if the bus is charging and it happens to be the middle of a summer day and ISO New England needs load to be taken off, then they would stop charging the bus.
Which means electricity. No one's like taking the bus for a ride. They're using the electricity for it.
Correct.
Right? Like in terms of priority use.
Kind of like when you
Sure.
unplug it.
Yeah, nobody's using the bus, nobody's joyriding, nobody's taking it, into the city. It's completely
But
at
would
the
they
control of the schools.
Would they take the charge from the bus and put it into the grid? Is that like the bus contributes power to?
So there's two ways they wanted to do a demonstration. One is ready to go because there's actually a market mechanism for compensation, and that would be if the bus is charging and the ISO New England says stop taking off electricity, then the bus would stop charging during that hour or 2 hours. The other idea, which right now is not implementable, would be that the bus would be able to put charge back into the system. So take the electricity back and forth. That is not the charging station they're proposing to use right now. And the grid, the market, ISO New England, right now doesn't compensate for that.
Got it.
Using school buses. So it's sort of aspirational. They'd like to do that. It's just the market's not ready for that. So they have that portfolio of demand response, which says when ISO New England says, stop charging, turn off your lights, turn down your thermostat, turn off your electric bus, then they would do that. But if it's in conflict with what the schools need, they would not. And the reason they can do that is because they have that bigger portfolio of demand response. So the bus is one piece of it, but they can cover if the schools need the bus to be fully charged. This is what they proposed. It is not the flat nose, which is, I think, the preferred bus style. At least that's what I heard from capital budget. Again, you get to choose what your ultimate bus looks like. If you start adding in 360-degree cameras, television stations, chargers, the cost is probably gonna go up. But again, these are details that are up to the schools.
Says 71 passengers.
Same amount of seats, standard. Twenty-four seats.
And I talked about the need for a timely decision. If you do want to proceed, I really am concerned about getting behind the EPA grant funds that are gonna create a rush. Now, the good news is because of that $5 billion going into the market, by the end of this lease, if not before, I think the cost curve is gonna come down with respect to electric buses, and we will be ready to make bigger decisions because of the information. All the data is gonna be shared with us, and NLX will keep track of what the O&M costs are, what the fuel costs are, what the time is, how much the kilowatt hour per mile is, all that type of information that the schools would need to make an informed decision about going to an electric fleet conversion, if that's in the future. And that, in my mind, that's the play here, right? There are cost savings, but it's really about taking advantage of a demonstration project to get that information as a prototype of what could be the future of our bus fleet. Superintendent, you did a great job. Apologize for all the animation. That's the consultant in me.
Thank you for your kindness. Under pressure earlier.
All right, we'll open up to school committee questions. Mr. Carr?
Well, I would respectfully disagree with the chair, which gets me in trouble on a regular basis, but while they don't run projects in this town, this committee has done wonderful work for the town. Give you a couple of examples. There are chargers around town that the public can use that are free to the consumer, and that might be changer may have already changed, but have been free for some time. They help the town to implement solar field up at the transfer station, which I think has saved about $300,000 in the last 5 years. So look, I'm in favor of things like this that are good for the environment and that are not a huge cost increase for us, but having this data at the end of this study would be very helpful to the town to understand what this means for the town. So I think, this is the future, what I think buses look like, and sometimes it's a bit of a leap of faith. And so this is the type of thing that I think is probably worthwhile to do. And if you're going to make a decision on it, I like having as much information as we can about it. So really, I thank you all for giving us a lot to think about. See, I didn't even disagree that much.
Mr. Kuhn?
I just want to echo all that. This committee and others have done. Thank you. I also, I'm totally on board. I can't stand gasoline. It's definitely something hopefully in the past. I don't even like gas stations. None of them. I just think it's the future. And, one of the things that I was concerned with, because I had an electric car, is at least to know if it's real or all real. Because my car had a hard time getting up to drive.
Right.
That's why, because I in it and it would go nowhere. So I was like, I hate this car. And I'm sorry I did, but that was one of my concerns.
No, and again, I think the safety and the no slip during the winter. The good news is the bus manufacturers are aware of the different weather conditions and the need to make sure that in the snow and the ice, the school buses can perform. And again, I think these are details that we don't have at our disposal, but I'm sure the schools are very on top of.
One of the questions, if I can just add, I had with that is, and this is going to show my lack of knowledge about electric school buses, but I'm concerned with the range of the school bus. I was thinking about it in terms of being used for a field trip or being used for, I guess concerned is not the word, I'm more, I don't know what the range is, so I don't know how that would translate to using it for a field trip. And then, although the availability of electric charging stations are more plentiful now, the thought of that the receiving end of that field trip needing to charge it and not having a charge, it's just could be a practical issue. So I don't know if you have any information about that. I'm not expecting you're an expert on electric buses either, but that's something I'm just not sure of.
No, and I think this is exactly why we want to do this type of demonstration project, right? To see, even if they say what the range is, under certain use, the range is gonna vary. Under temperature changes, the range would vary. And so I think getting that type of information about, with one demonstration project, not a conversion of the whole fleet, but one prototype, what is it? How does the range compare? How does it compare if it's a short highway trip versus local around the town? You know, this is the type of information that we can pull in, because even if you get your MTG equivalent, right, for the school bus, it's gonna change based on conditions somewhat. So I don't have off the top of my head what the range is, but they did feel like an all day, looking at what the routes, the bus routes are, having that bus do one of the bus routes 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the afternoon, they did not see a range issue at all.
Yeah, our thoughts were, if we went with this, it would be more of a,
Field trip or long.
would not be a field trip.
Right, no, that was. one of the
Correct. It would be more
thoughts
of
we
it
had was
in our
we have to stay
fleet.
within as one of our regular routes.
Or it could
rather
do
than-
field trips with research. There are growing number of destinations that have a charger, growing number of
Correct.
schools that have a charger. There's an
Correct.
athletic event that has charging, you know, like.
We'd have
I
to
feel
know
like we
which
just need
charges
to do
on
our
the
due
other side.
diligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be stretching the range, right, nobody wants kids sitting on the side of the freeway.
And particularly, the weather conditions and how it performs during certain weather conditions, which are often bad around here. To consider that as we're using it day to day. And then the maintenance associated with those. types of issues.
It's covered, the maintenance is covered, I guess my question to that would be, like, where will the bus go for maintenance in the turnaround time? 'Cause,
Right.
I mean, we're so short on buses and drivers right now, we will occasionally buy a bus from Hingham or borrow a bus from Situate, because we have a bus from Shop, which is local.
Right.
We are designated to be done more with the turnaround.
Right, so again, I think it depends on if you're going with Lion C or if you're going with a different brand, because you can choose a different brand and then what the solution is for the maintenance. I don't know the turnaround time. It obviously depends on the maintenance, but as you know, the electric buses, just like electric cars, have a fraction of the moving parts. So the amount of maintenance that's required is very different than an internal combustion engine.
And maintenance is covered through the length of the lease.
Yes.
Just to follow up on that, we're gonna be getting school buses soon, so we're gonna be having a conversation on, the good news is we lease them, so we can lease them for 3 years. I think maybe should we lease them for 2? So my question is, what do you think the I love this idea. So how long do you think we could do? We do in the next 3 years, incorporate this into our fleet?
Yeah, oh no, this could, as soon as the order's in, it's gonna be a 10 to 12 month, I believe, 10 to 12 month lead time. And if the lease doesn't start until it's delivered.
Okay.
And the options that we asked them to price out, which they did, is a 5-year lease, a 7-year lease, and a 5-year lease to own, 7-year lease to own. So my understanding of the current leases is they're 3 years with 2 1-year renewals. And so this fleet has gone for 4 years. You're in the 4th year.
So,
What if,
so we sign
what
up.
if, sorry,
No,
life
please.
expectancy of an electric bus?
So the battery is warranted for 10 years. And this is why thinking about, do you do a 7-year to own and still have that 3-year guarantee period? And there's just a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of
I
unknowns.
like the fact, because I was part of the committee that voted on the first, the lease that we have now. And some of the things we got, some of the other things that we talked about was like seatbelts. Talked about, like, is that important to us now? And the other thing was the 360 camera. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the technology we'll be looking for. Because that gives the bus drivers the ability to look everywhere. And currently our cameras don't do that, 280s. So, I mean, I was really trying to push for the 360s back then. But, going forward, I just think the technology, if it's out, it's right there. I think absolutely that we should go for what you're doing. And I appreciate it. Because it's like, all the questions can kind of be answered after we kind of test this first possible. So that we can circle back
And if we circle back in the next 3 years, we'll be able to probably buy them all.
Maybe, you know, I mean, I think it's really a question of how far down the cost curve do the electric buses come? Because right now they're 2 to 3 times the cost of the diesel
Okay.
bus.
Right.
But I think with the EPA money,
Right.
it's gonna, the manufacturing of the electric, there's gonna be 25,000 to 50,000 new electric school buses. So 5 to 10% of the entire US bus fleet is going to be converted to electric buses within the next 5 years. I mean, that is just, you know
Yes.
where the prices are gonna go.
And to echo your point, Ford built a 6-mile factory to build a Ford truck, which will be able to power your house. I tried 10 years ago. I'm like, I have 2 engines outside. Why would I have to wait at a gas station? For it? It would just make no sense to me. And then I'm watching TV and I'm like, my wife's like, your invention 10 years later. I'm like, great. Now I can enjoy it. So I do recognize that. And I think that this answers a lot of our questions going forward about what we're going to do in finance facilities to talk about what we're going to do for leasing. So it is coming up to.
Next week.
Yeah, yeah, so I would say that we probably suggest that we probably have to go with the new diesels for the next, because that we have now.
Yeah, I don't see them being phased out.
Yeah, I don't, in the next 3 years, but the good news is that we lease them, we don't own them, so we can give them back and then incorporate
And
this.
I think that might be a consideration, you know, if it's determined about the electric bus, is that, you know, we do have buses that are in the 4th year of service, and from what I understand, talking to Sue and Ray, they're already showing some corrosive effects.
Right, that's why 3
Weather,
years.
winter. But if we're thinking of the electric bus with the new technology and some of the unknowns, including what I just mentioned, I mean, it might be a shorter lease. Of course, leases are always, you know, you want to make the best financial choice.
Yeah.
But there are some reasons I think that it might dictate a shorter lease for an electric bus this time around if we went that way.
It's because we don't know.
Right, you don't know what you don't know.
And that was some of the questions that
Yeah.
Ray, the transportation supervisor, asked about. We don't know how long they're gonna last, how sustainable they are, so do we want to do a long lease, a shorter lease? You mentioned, you know, test driving it, can we try it out? To see if it's something, you know, how much training does it entail?
10 hours.
10 hours.
And that's included.
And then the parking was, I think, our other concern. Ideally, it'd be nice to have all of us in one
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
Because we're not sure who's gonna be driving what at the time.
so I figure we'll surface some of the other things as we go, but I sort of interrupted the school committee's chance.
Yeah, you know, I'd also.
I apologize for that.
Yeah, I would also say they're so quiet, like it scares me. You always hear the bus coming, my car. Matter of fact, when I went to go buy my electric car, people, 2 different salespeople didn't even know the car was actually quiet. It's like, because it was so quiet. You know, so, I don't know if they can kind of make the school bus is coming. I'm a little worried.
Yeah, I
about
mean,
that.
I think,
They have GPS now.
Yeah, but they're not loud. like,
right, they're not loud.
You know
They're
what I
not
mean?
loud.
They're putting sound in somebody.
Yeah, that's, I suggest they do, like, vroom, like, get out of my way. I don't know. I do worry about that. though.
Yes, how long is this procurement available to us?
So they had been given the money last year. They've been very gracious about continuing to extend things. Mass CC, who is given the primary grant, is very patient, but they're starting to wonder what's going on. So again, I think the key, we could drag this on with a smile and kindness. You know, at some point, they're just gonna walk away. But I think we could drag it on. Again, I think the key pressure point is the order of buses that are coming in from $500 million of grants from the EPA that were just awarded 2 weeks ago. If we don't get in front of that order, it's not gonna be a 10 to 12 month lead time. It's probably gonna be significantly longer. So I would just, I know there are details to be worked out. We've been working on it for a year. And I think Mr. Carr should take responsibility for finding a place for the buses to park because he's very good at solving those types of problems. But but I do think, I don't want to throw you under the bus.
Oh, wait for that one.
But, you know, I think we are close to getting to the point where they need a demonstration project. They've got the money ready to go. We got this opportunity because Hopkinton stepped back.
We've been talking about this for, I
We've been
haven't
talking
listened to it. So we're ready. I think I can make a motion.
Not yet.
Oh, lady, I'm so sorry.
Well, then, the rest of us.
I know.
So Ms. St. Ange, any questions? And also, I think there's some points the administration also wants to make too, so, but go to St. Ange.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the amount of work when Ms. Waddell says that she brings this to us as a no-brainer. That means just hours and hours and meetings have passed of work on your end, and I appreciate that on your committee. I think this is a really important time to be proactive, to take this step. I think if we didn't, we'd look back in a few years and be like, man, we really missed. I feel like it's like the post office missing out on email, right? Like you've got to take advantage of it and kind of take a little, it doesn't feel like a huge leap of faith to me because electric vehicles are out there. They're in our community. I know this is a bigger vehicle carrying our children, but it just feels like a really important step to take at this moment when there's funding, when we still have a fleet and it's kind of this like transfer of passing of the baton when both are coexisting. I guess I don't have much more to say. It just seems like it makes a lot of sense to do this at this moment and gather the information so we can move forward.
Mr. Cullen?
Most of my questions have been raised already, and I agree with Ms. Waddell's sentiments that she expressed in that demonstration project is a perfect way to get to know these resources and see if they work for us. Is it lithium ion battery? Is that what it is? So is there, probably don't know. I mean, including is there some sort of monitoring of like the state of the battery, make sure it's not damaged or anything like that, and your ongoing maintenance is regularly checked? Because I know these things are sometimes can be volatile.
Yes, they are checked. There's a regular maintenance schedule. Again, that's included in, but these are like computers on wheels. So how often they charge, what the heat of the battery is, that's monitored. So a lot of the key indicators of whether or not something bad is going to happen, which has been very rare in the electric buses that have been operating. It's just part of the information that is an ongoing monitorship that NLX would do and provide to us on a real-time basis as well.
Well, I agree with the same sentiments that, this is an overly novel concept. EVs are out there. These issues with obviously being overly sensitive just because it's transporting children. But I think the instances of these, spontaneous combustion of these batteries are fairly rare in comparison to the amount of vehicles out there. But it's nevertheless a consideration that I just wanted to voice. I just wanted to thank the three of you on behalf of the committee, the rest of the committee not here, for addressing what I deem very urgent issues on behalf of our village of Cohasset, Massachusetts. Whether for me the jury's still out on whether in the long term these EV batteries are better for the environment than gasoline, but I know we can certainly do better than fossil fuels, and whether EVs are the way to do it, is to be seen. And this is a good way to sort of take that forward step. If we don't do it, then we never will. So I'm certainly in favor of it. And thank you so much for all the work that went into this. I know you guys have met a lot and talked a lot about this, and have a lot of time has transpired before you got to this seat and talking to us. So thank you. Because I feel it's very valuable. It's a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, my Vice Chairman Cohen. So first of all, thank you for all this work. It really is a lot, and I know we're all volunteers, so very much appreciate what you put together. I do harbor a few concerns, and I want to ask some from the administration about logistics, and I'll just put it in this way. If this were Boston, where we had a fleet of 1,000 buses, and we were talking about leasing a bus, where the loss of a bus, if something happened, if it doesn't work, would not have a significant impact on our kids getting to school, this would be an absolute no-brainer. But we were talking about replacing a bus that is a known quantity to us, and not an additional bus. Because if it's replacing an existing bus, then it's cost neutral. we're adding a bus, we're adding a ninth bus, then it's not costing us an additional 20 grand. So I have some concerns about, I just want to make sure that we've thought about the robustness of our transportation network, and we are able to, you know, deal with both the parking situation, any other conflicts, and so I guess Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Owen, what have been the reaction on the administration side of some of those logistical issues, and specifically with respect to the robustness of our
Yeah,
network?
and Sue, clearly jump in if I'm misstating or if you feel like there's additional information. I also want to echo that we should dial snacks for your work here. You know, our vision as a district is to empower students to improve communities and really be modeling that. So that itself is special and very relevant to what we're doing. The question for me comes down to, are we situated currently to be able to utilize this very important bus in our fleet, as we're not, and that is part of the really, to me, the only issue. It's a logistical issue because we don't have any place to put our buses right now, period. We're renting out a spot in town. That certainly wouldn't be a place where we would want to, I wouldn't think, because it's so temporary, put in a charging station. And that means that we would have a scenario where we have our diesel buses in one spot, and at least until we have a solution for our parking, this bus in a totally different spot, which brings some unique challenges. One is in terms of routing, how you have a facility that's connected to particularly in weather, facility that's connected to all the other buses where the bus drivers can use and go, where you have to have one driver separated from that group, go over to wherever this bus was parked, which I believe could be in the short term at the rec center. We also have the issue of plowing. We often have, scenarios where we're, and I'd say, a few times a year where we're down to the hour to try to make sure these lots are plowed so we can get our buses on the road. And again, this is a bus we're going to have in our regular routine and cycle. That's a concern. I totally agree with you conceptually about maintenance, and that it would seem that these are a lot less complex than they probably are. Again, I don't know a lot about electric buses than a diesel bus, but I also know that it does present potentially some different repair strategies, and it does create some unknowns in repair turnaround for us. And again, to Chairman Dial's point, this is a bus that it's not a luxury for us. We don't have a lot of extra buses. We're using our buses on field trips. We're using our buses. A bus goes down and we have an extra bus. We don't have a lot of extra drivers. We double up. We're just not a unit that has a lot of flexibility when it comes to the dependability of our transportation. Those are the only hesitations that I have, as someone that's working with Sue to make sure the operations of the schools flow. Everything that it represents is exactly what we want. It's just, is Cohasset ready for this bus in our schools, given those unknowns? That's the question that, we have to kind of solve. I like the idea of it, and I like I'd like to be able to say yes, but I do have these concerns, and it would be, I feel I have to present.
Can I raise a point of clarification?
Mr. Olmsted.
Oh, okay.
To be doing things.
To just understand this process, if we as a committee vote tonight to approve moving forward with this, and then Sue and Ray and Dr. Sullivan just talk about logistics and are figuring out this whole package in the bus, and it turns out at that point, it's not going to work. And they then back out of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, we're bringing the opportunity. At some point, there's a handoff to the operations, right? And I would think that's what this vote is about now. And so our hope would be, and we're here to assist and participate, but our hope would be that the schools would take the lead with NLX. working with whatever the process is, define what's the brand of the bus, the style of the bus, the details of the bus, get the information about the, what happens if it goes down, where does it get fixed, what's the range, are there options on the range, what's the cost of the larger range? So, those are all details that the Alternative Energy Committee just can't answer, obviously. So, but those are questions for the school. So in my mind, again, knowing that you're in the process of going out to bid, maybe you want it to be the same, maybe you want it to be different, I don't know. Again, that's the decision of the school. In my mind, the vote tonight would be, does the school committee want to proceed with the finalizing the terms of the demonstration project with NLX? That's it. And if it turns out through the course of that, there's just a non-starter. And one of the non-starters could be we just take too long and suddenly it's not a 10 to 12 month delivery, it's a 18 to 24 month delivery because we're behind the EPA grants.
Right.
I'm just posing that. In my mind, that's one of the biggest timing risks that we face. So I would hope if the vote is to proceed, it's done quickly with NLX, we can take advantage of this opportunity, at least to figure out, does it work or doesn't it? Hopkinton went through the process, they were going through their own things. They decided they didn't want to do it.
Yep.
Logistically, they couldn't get their arms around it. And that's where we got the opportunity. And SCC said, Cohasset's very innovative. They get things done. Would you like to look at this? And that's where we are. So in my mind, that's what the vote tonight is, sort of.
Right, we're not writing a check tonight, but this allows us to do our due diligence with our experts in administration and see if it makes the most sense.
And Sue, as well, I'm sorry, Lydia, just a point of clarification on that. Yeah, I think also as we're looking at bus leases, is this looked at as and if I'm wrong with the number, a 7th or 8th bus? Correct? Is it a,
That's what I was gonna ask.
sorry,
So the conversation, there's been no decision made, the conversation and next week with subcommittee is, we have 8 now. We own one that's aging. I would like to release 8 plus 1.
right,
The plus 1 would be the electric bus, but we also, the thought is that we would add another route. Because right now, when we have one, because of the driver shortage, when we have one driver out, and we go to double up a route, the students are on the bus too long.
correct.
So if we added a route and
Right.
had 9, it'd be less children on a bus. It'd be much easier to double up and short.
So I think, I mean, I know we had discussed it, but I just wanted to get that out in the open because that's a pivotal point for us.
Discussing, that would be the hope. And
It's
then
just-
the sense of that, we could get our 8 buses. And then the 9th bus could come.
Yeah.
When it gets
We just, our needs are, we're very tight with the resources we have for transportation and meeting our needs, both with drivers and.
But to Mr. St. Ange's point, none of this has to be decided today. We're just deciding whether we're gonna take next step, correct?
So it feels like.
Well,
easier.
although there's a time.
But this vote allows us to then do that and do that research and make the decision.
Like, right now, we either, we either give it a quick death, or we decide to further explore what the options are, whether it's gonna be a 9th bus, whether it's gonna be a 5-year lease or a 7-year to own, or all this stuff.
Right.
Where we're gonna put the charging station, things like that.
Well, yes, and also.
If we say no, then none of that.
Because to me, the real elephant in the room is the parking. It's just where are we putting these buses, electric bus or no bus? Where are we putting them? But with an electric bus.
Mark St. Ange will go snowblow it out on snowy mornings, I guarantee it.
Well-
He's gonna pull a Paul Kearney, and get out there with his own equipment.
Oh, I mean, but we need to have a stable solution for our kids.
Yeah,
And
well,
this
like,
is-
because
this
Ray
is-
goes in the winter, Ray will go out, and clean off all buses.
Yes.
And get them running and warming up. So this would put Ray at 2 different places.
And it's not just the
Don't
weather.
worry about all that.
It's not just the weather, it's a
Well,
separation.
This is just, these are considerations for this is just whether or not we want to take the next step in this.
So to be clear, they're not looking for anything binding on the school.
Well,
Just that we want to move forward.
they want something binding as soon as possible, right?
Right,
Because they
and
need to
eventually we'll get
realize
that, but-
that. I think, again, this vote, because our committee can only take it so far. We've been working with the schools, so they're That's why they are aware of these issues. And we have backup solutions, in my mind. We've talked about solutions that maybe aren't optimal, maybe aren't the best, but they're solutions that would allow it to proceed, in my mind. I guess the question to the school committee and to the schools is there a non-starter that we've identified over the course of the last year that would warrant a recommendation to the school committee that we just stop wasting anybody's time? Like, is there a non-starter that we're aware of at this point in time that would say, thank you very much for your help, but it
No,
just
there's
doesn't
not
work?
a non, I mean, from my view, it's not a non-starter. I just wish we could make this a no-brainer. It's just not because of the factors we brought up. So the parking is a major, and it's not just about what, it's about separating these two buses because we can't put a charging station where we currently house our fleet. So that itself is a major problem when you're trying to have a dependable bus fleet working in unison to transport kids each day. So it's not a non-starter, but it is it's what separates this from being, yeah, we're innovative. Clearly our message is to do this. We don't even have parking for our buses that is handled by our town right now. We don't. So we're outsourcing. So how innovative can we be if we can't even have our own bus lot?
And I like anchoring on Ms. Allen's point, but this is more of a, administrative rather than a kind of defining. But one question that keeps coming up. As I'm hearing this, I'm not really feeling the urgency. What I'm feeling is that as time goes on, costs are going to go down. So, like, what advantage do we get for doing this now versus waiting for all the other districts to get school buses? And then we see how their experiences are. And we can base it on that. I guess, I understand that there's some grant money, but the grant money makes it a knock, relatively speaking, with existing buses when all things are considered. So, why now versus just waiting until, I think you're right. In 10 years, all of our buses, and maybe the next time we cycle through our lease, we're going to go all electric, and maybe we'll all be required to. But I guess, given the not robustness of our school fleet, and so the logistical problems, what are we buying with acting now, as opposed to just waiting for other districts to take these on?
So I think what we have is a unique opportunity for the town of Cohasset to test it out at the same price of a diesel bus, full stop. Right now, as I said, the electric buses are 2 to 3 times the cost. I don't see them coming down the cost curve to be on par with diesel buses within the next 5 years. I think they're still going to be more expensive. I think there could be an unfunded mandate from the state at some point. Right now, they're using carrots to try to encourage communities to move forward with this. So it's a unique opportunity. It's going to be very hard for the town to get a grant for an electric school bus going forward unless it's a demonstration project.
And we get free fuel and free maintenance.
Love that.
Free charge.
Maybe this can help the town, help
It
us
also
find.
seems like a really
spot
important
for us.
symbolic step to take as a town, like, let's be proactive, let's say we care about the environment, let's take a step towards it. You can turn up your lip at that, Lance, but
Well,
I
I
think
just
it's
don't want to do that
important.
with our kids getting to school. Like, it's.
In a clean vehicle?
Well, when it's a demonstration project, I like the idea. I've sold the panels in my house. Like, I'm all for this. I'm all for it. Like, this is great. Sitting in the seat, my primary goal is kids come to school. It's less about the symbolic thing. I didn't mean to just turn a lip up. I was just reacting. That's what but I like the idea, and I also like the idea that we can continue to explore and try and solve some of these logistical issues and learn more. I just don't see right now an advantage of being in the vanguard.
I disagree.
Well, it also I'd use this to put a push in to the town to help us find a spot to put our buses.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this is another reason why we need that. And it is a real impediment not having. So if the town really wants to be innovative and I want to partner with that,
Yeah.
they've got to help us. They've got to help us.
I agree with you.
Now, they did offer a spot, right? So the electric bus has a spot. I know
Separated
we'd
from
rather
our
have
other
them.
law, our other buses.
We just like to bring whatever we're talking about, we're looking at some space over at Deer Hill, behind Deer Hill. We also talked about that covered parking updating it. I think it wasn't a big sell-up because where you would have put it as opposed to, I didn't think anybody kind of liked it where it was. However, this might be a unique opportunity to bring that solar panel because it doesn't seem like it's not going to be in anybody's vision. I think that was the purpose. But the idea that we could put the buses, our electric buses, under a solar panel, basically, I think that would be a win situation. That way every bus is together. And to Dr. Sullivan's point, like we are looking at ways to do that. We do want to be a partner. I just think that like we do need to tell the town to get, like, we need help here because we're renting a spot that isn't a great spot for our drivers. It's not a great spot for anybody. So this would motivate, I think could be really good for the community that we say, yeah, we look to see the pros and cons to getting the school buses there. However, in the long run, do we really want to see 5 years from now that new project being in that place that we can actually store the buses? So we do have a problem that we need to solve. Why not solve it with the whole environmental? Why, you know, Cohasset's blessed to be, you know, we're blessed to live in this town. We should be, you know,
That would be
showing other
particularly.
communities of why wouldn't we want to be the first ones to start?
I
and
love
say,
that.
We are the first community.
I also think those things can happen concurrently. We
Right.
can vote to move forward.
Right.
This bus can go into production. That takes over a year. And during that time, the bus parking problem solving can happen. Because
Right.
we don't have to wait for the bus parking lot to be paved and the charger to be plugged in to say, yeah, let's move forward with the bus. These
Especially when we
things
have an alternative. that
Correct.
They're giving us.
I don't disagree, but
And
I-
I have absolute supreme confidence that we're going to get a bus parking solution
can- I agree.
laid out. I mean, it's absurd. It's objectively ridiculous. So we don't have a place in our town to park the buses. I'm saying this on the record to the town, to the community. It's ridiculous.
It is.
So we're paying someone, a private landowner, money to park our buses on. And if you don't know that, we are. It's ridiculous. So I have supreme confidence we're gonna resolve that.
Yes.
So I agree with Ms. St. Ange, and I think we should.
So I think
Call the question.
everything that's, I think we've had a pretty fulsome discussion, so I think we're probably ready to act. I guess, quick question, what is, I mean, we'll obviously entertain a resolution. I guess what is what box does the resolution need to check for your purposes?
I think that we would need the school committee to vote to proceed, to have the schools engage in negotiations with NLX to finalize the details of the demonstration project.
Subject to further committee approval or?
We would need further committee approval for, what we needed for the lease. And this would be part of the lease.
She said to
Right.
engage in negotiations.
That's correct. That's correct.
So-
But we
Just
have
stated
to.
it exactly as it should be.
Second, and let's just do roll call, Mr. Carr,
Carr, aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Present.
All right.
Aye.
Ms. Salem.
tired.
Aye.
And Mr. Thumb.
Aye.
And Mr. Dial, aye, to proceed with the negotiations. So thank you very much for your work, and I appreciate it. We had a great, appreciate everything you've brought for us, and looking forward to learning more.
Very good.
I think everybody here knows I'm also married to this fine lady. We both serve on multiple committees in town. It's never been an issue before, but I recognize my esteemed colleague, my wife, who is the chair of the organization, so for the record, I think this is in everybody's best interest. I don't see a conflict. If anybody does, please let me know, but I just think we
Thank
should
you for all
be
you're doing,
transparent.
your patience and your thorough work.
Thank you all.
Right.
You're still collaborating with us.
Yeah, oh, yes, absolutely. Again, I'd like the schools to take the lead because these are all questions that you need to ask and answer, but we are here in an advisory role and are happy to sit in on all the discussions. Again, I think we would just be more in a supportive role as opposed to the lead role, which we played for the last year.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
Yes.
All right, well, that does it for our invited guests.
Well, just about midnight.
So, yeah, we have a heavy agenda. So now we got school updates, very quick update from Dr. Sullivan, and then we'll talk about some MCAS. I think those are the last meat of our agenda.
Yes. Just have a, So just by way of, I will promise I'll go very rapidly, but we had a very, I'd say, robust couple of weeks in terms of activities. We had our High Five Friday. I'm gonna go really quickly through these, but they were awesome events and I wanted the community to see them. We had our police and fire, emergency responders at every building. Kids loved it. I think the emergency personnel loved it. I certainly loved it. It was a great day. You can see them at every level. And the high school kids, I think they really liked it. You know, but obviously they didn't get quite the exuberant reactions that you got at Osgood, but it was a lovely day, really at every level, middle school. Deer Hill Fun Run, Osgood Deer Hill Fun Run by PSO. PSO is on fire these last couple of weeks. There's so many great things for our school community. This was wonderful. I loved it. They come I saw Miss McClellan there. We were sitting there watching them and they come flying out of the gate, sprinting. And then by like the third lap, you see their little cheeks with the kind of red and a slow jog is fine. If you look at my newsletter, I have a video. And if you click on the video, you see at one point, you can hear Mrs. Steele say, "It's okay, a slow jog is fine, a slow jog is fine." But just a great community event. There's Mr. Dykes and yeah, it was packed and Miss Gibson and her class and you know, they are coming out of the gates, the smiles, everyone was loving it. It was a really nice day. Speaking of nice events, the Cohasset Education Fall Festival at the Paragon Boardwalk was wonderful, raised about $30,000 for the CEF. Could not be more thankful for that. I had I think they called Thirsty Boots. They were the band playing, local band. These are just some of the organizers of the event. And there we go, some guests right there.
Hey.
Star-studded cast. Spirit Week at the high school leading up to our homecoming was wonderful. This was USA Day, more from that. Obviously peace, and I believe it was peace and math. I can't remember what the math thing was. It's like two kind of disparate events happening on this day, but I was in some classrooms and it was fun. Great pep rally. This is a Dan Leahy photograph and musical chairs. I love that we still do old school musical chairs, and you can see Mr. McCabe, who actually finished second. I think he practices at home. He is a master at it, but a great dance that night, I'm told. This is a nice thing that we do in Cohasset is at the homecoming, we honor 7 students who represent the Cohasset core values. And in this case, helping find their compass. And these are some wonderful students who are recognized. This is many members of the senior class who were there at this event, which is great. And they won. They beat East Bridgewater pretty handily. The cheerleaders. Our this is boys soccer, but our sports teams have done wonderfully. We have 4 teams heading into the playoffs, all with very high seeds. This is our soccer team who tied Rockland and I guess won the league. And they're a high seed in the tournament, as are our girls. They're the number 1 seed in the tournament. Division 4. Cross country has just had a wonderful year. Many of them are moving on to state competition. This is senior day. This is our field hockey, who's also, I believe, 3 seed in their division. And this is the senior day. It was so foggy, you could barely see what you were doing. Volleyball, again, new team, had a great year. Trunk or treat went on. I'll go quickly, but a wonderful PSO event. You can see all the community. I love that one. You can see all the community involvement. It was great. Hocus Pocus says I smell children there, which is a very Hocus Pocus thing. Packed, absolutely packed. What a great event. Star Wars, Tropical Jungle, food trucks on hand, Candyland, which is appropriate. And this gentleman was dressed as like a grave digger on the side. It was great. Very spooky theme. It was nice. And I'm happy to follow up that our first RAG Kids class took place last evening at the middle school and high school learning commons right here. And then they went down to the all-purpose room. We had 13 students of both genders, mixed genders. And it was a great event. And we're looking forward to doing more with the older students as well. And today, our boys and girls cross-country teams did so well, finishing third in the league meet. Anna Cassieri placed third overall for the girls, and Mike Giglio, yes, Jenna's brother, won the boys race. So congratulations to them and to the coaches and to the whole program. Just really nice. So anyway, those are my updates. And I just wanted to make sure that I touch base on some great things that are happening in the district.
Thank you. It's great to see all the happy kids. That's
It's wonderful, yeah.
Praise God why we do this. So.
Yeah, it was a long meeting, but that was worth seeing the happy kids. So for me. So that's it for in terms of my update. And I
will turn it over to Scollins for teaching and learning. We have a media agenda item there.
So MCAS, as you know, our results came in, letters went home, everyone got their results, yes? Okay, good. I checked to make sure.
Yeah, no,
Really
one
odd.
wrong and one didn't.
Yeah.
But we fixed that, right?
Yeah, I
Good.
mean, if they bowl, they both get the same, 1 point, whatever they do, that's 1 point away. It's crazy.
Apologize for
And the
that.
Yeah,
MCAS was the
sorry about
same
that,
way.
but that happened,
They
yeah.
get, no, it's great, and thank you for that.
So, sorry, you guys,
No.
all right.
Happy with the
So-
results. Yeah.
So MCAS is an important assessment. It's one that we take every year, well, unless you have COVID and you skip a year, but it's an important piece of data. It's not the only piece of data that we have on students, but certainly it's one that we use and we look at how are we doing at teaching the standards and where there are opportunities for us to improve what we're doing for our students. So I just kind of want to say that up front. There's other things that we do. We have iReady, we have other assessments that teachers use. So there's all different ways that we look at students. So this year, the state gave us some information when they rolled out the results. Obviously, you know, we had a very interesting couple of years with COVID. So this year was our first full MCAS for those grades, 3 through 8 since 2019. The grade 10 students in 2020 had not taken an MCAS test since 2019, and they were in grade 7. So I think that's kind of an interesting fact that, you know, impacts our students. So in 2019, we had our full administration for our students, 3 through 8 and our 10th graders. We didn't have a test in the 20 because of the pandemic. We had half a test. So the 3 through 8, they only did the 1 day of testing for content. However, grade 10 did have a full test administered, but they could opt out of science. It was optional. And then this year we had full administration of the test for 3 through 8. This is all information that was given to us by the state. There we go. And so from the state, they, you know, looked overall all of the assessments from the MCAS, and it showed some mixed results. Math scores across the state were increased. English language arts, or ELA, scores declined across the state, and science scores increased slightly or kind of stayed the same. So when we compare the results to the pre-pandemic levels, we have, you know, we definitely have a ways to go to kind of recover from all of those, the learning loss that occurred. But that's why this is helpful for us to look at, right? This is a benchmark place for us to be able to say, okay, you know, what standards did we get? What standards didn't we get? And then where do we shore up our kids? In ELA, there's 2 areas, the focus for improvement, an impact of the lower writing scores that came out of this assessment, and then early literacy challenges. Plus, student absenteeism remained a challenge across the board for recovery efforts. I'll do a little bit about absenteeism.
That's across
later on.
this is
This is all
across the
state.
entire state.
This is just state information, which, obviously we're part of the state. So when we're looking at student growth, they didn't do anything with student growth last year. So they are now looking at the percentile of student growth. And that's that SGP that you see. And so that now looks at the 2019 and then 2022. They're not using the 2021 data.
Dr. Scott, can you just explain what student growth is? Like, obviously you have the calculations there, but what is it?
So student growth is when they look at a group of students and they look at the scores that they got, and then they look at that the next year and who falls above it, who falls below in that cohort, and that gives you your growth. That's a very simple way to say it.
So you've established a cohort of like scoring students.
Exactly.
So
And then
they're measuring you against those like scoring students across the state. So it does measure apples to apples.
Right.
As opposed to.
Correct. Right. And so they moved to that a few years ago. And so when we're looking at student growth percentile, when you look at the numbers where it talks about what is low growth, high growth. So if it's, if your growth is, if you see growth percentile, 1 to 19 is very low growth. You have your 20, 39 is low growth, 40 to 59 is typical growth, and anything higher, right? High growth or very high growth. And typical growth, 40 to 60 is always what I'm looking for. Obviously, you always want to see high achievement, high growth, but typical growth is good. And that's, very solid growth for students. And so here's our data from this year. And you can see this is our elementary. And we are above the state for all of it. And we have solid growth. We have consistent growth.
Can you explain what percent ME means?
Yep. So the percentage of meeting or exceeding expectations. So these are those numbers. So, and then you have partially met or not meeting expectations. So just using the meeting to exceed expectations for this presentation. And if you will, there's a cheat sheet at the bottom. You can see what the growth is, just to remind you what that means. And there's no growth for third grade because they're the first to take it. So there's nothing to compare to. And then here's our secondary. So we have 6th grade and then 10th grade. And the past couple of years, 6th grade, 6 through 8 has been pulled out. It used to be part of the high school. Some of you don't remember that, but now they're their own entity, which is a good thing. And again, you can see we have really solid, consistent growth. And if you look to the bottom right-hand corner, when you look at science, so that's the 10th grade, that across the bottom, that is the old legacy assessment measurement. So the percentage of proficient or higher, that used to be the old terminology. It will change. These students are I believe, are the last ones that will have this. But this also ties into, they left it like this because it ties into the Abigail Adams Scholarship that the state gives based on the scores.
And
And we're in physics. We take physics in 9th grade. So it's kind of a little bit of a weird one because they do it in 9th
Particularly
grade.
as they change the test.
Yes,
the
and there are
test is
changes to the
more
test.
writing based than it has been.
Exactly. And so last year, we did some work with physics on that because Russ Sears was on a committee and he came back and said, holy smokes, we got to talk about this because there's going to be more writing, not fill in the blanks, not multiple choice. So we sat down with the teachers and Ed Savage and myself and the physics teachers and talked about, okay, so how could we change how we're doing things? Doesn't mean you have to make crazy changes, but just be thinking about how you can make kids write more. And we're actually talking about that across all content areas. How are we going to make sure kids are writing across content areas and what are we looking for? What are our expectations? So those conversations had actually begun last year. And then here's our high needs subgroup. And the high needs subgroup is a combination of students who are on IEP, are English language learners, that's what that EL stands for, or former EL English language learners, or is low income. Because we are so small, we don't always have enough in all groups. to really kind of disaggregate it by subcategory each one. So the high needs group is a good one to look at.
And it could be very small.
It could
It
be one
three
student
kids,
or,
two kids.
right.
But it's still there.
It's still data. So, and then even though they may not be able to drill it down for us when we're looking at all of the supports that the state gives us, we manually look at the students and we kind of say, okay, even though it's just a small number, we still drill down on them to see, are they still making the effective progress that we want them to make, and what adjustments do we have to make to our practice? In fact, when I was working with Principal Mills, because he's very good with data dialogue, and I was fortunate to be with Michael Stapleton, who's the team chair, and he and I immediately went right in and started digging in. And so with special ed, so it was great. There we go. And then this is a comparison of the results from this year of like in neighboring schools. Some of them are DART schools, some of them are just neighboring schools. And the DART schools are really just something that the state looks at and says, oh, you're similar to these people, but they're not necessarily around us. And so see our scores. We're on the very top. And again, strong, consistent growth. I can't say that enough. That's so important to see those pieces for us. And then this again is information from the state. So this is statewide data, and we were looking at the fact that there were lower writing scores, significant. And so each ELA test contains a requirement of an essay, and they showed a decline. And interestingly enough, a lot more zeros than we had seen in the past. And so it went from 19% in 2019 across the state to 31% in 2022. And so the average points scored per essay decreased in grades 3 through 8 with a larger decrease in 3 through 5. So this is where
We
they
saw
showed
some.
this. We saw, yeah, we did. And I've been communicating with the state. We understand their process, but we really want to drill down, and we're drilling down to look at, okay, here's the rubric that they're using. Why did this student get this and this student get that? And what are the things that we need to do to shore that up? So we're really trying to get some more clarification, and then also looking at our students, most importantly, to see what we need to do.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask because how does one get an actual zero?
Well, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So in the past, you didn't do anything.
Okay.
But
it's
that's
different.
not, yeah, so if you don't, if you do not respond to the prompt in a way that has any relationship to it, or it's very vague, they may give you 0.
Yeah, and a lot of,
Which
it
is
depends on the,
warranted if you're not answering a question.
Right.
So
So,
that's not
right,
unheard of, but to
right.
figure out.
right, but how to, and then we did see some things around, students going back and kind of, taking information from the prompt, from the reading, but not exactly saying it. Their writing was actually well done, their transitions had all sorts of things, but in fact, they weren't really going back in and getting evidence specifically out. They were kind of making generalizations, so they would get a lower score. So these are things that we're looking at, and we're really digging into see.
The state must be looking at this pretty aggressively too.
Yeah, they want us to look at it, because we're, right, because they want us, but
Yeah.
yeah, they do want us to do that. And to be looking at where is that?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, oh no, that's okay, it was a great question, and I think, this is time, we've had interrupted learning, so it's gonna take us some time to build back all of
and
that.
that's our approach. Our
Yeah.
approach is to look at the data and to work individually with teachers and grade levels of students, and then to create practice so they can improve based on the data we're gathering.
Right.
What the state's looking for.
Right, exactly. And then here's the statewide data for math. And compared to 21, the percentage of students scoring meeting or exceeding expectations, there started to be a recovery in grades 3 through 8. So a 6% increase, which is nice to see. And then here are the scores for Cohasset for our town. And I kept the state above so you can see it, but you can see that, obviously in 21 there was a dip. And however, everyone is making a positive trend upward in mathematics. So you can see our 3 through 8s up 14%. And then I divided it out so you could just see how the elementaries and the middle school are doing. So, and again, obviously not where we were, but we're making progress toward that. And here's the statewide details for our ELA, and those scores declined in 22 as compared to 21. And again, this is across the state. But again, we are following those trends also. And our writing scores were lower than last year's in grade 3, which I already told you about. So here's the state, and then here is where we are compared to. So Deer Hill had a decrease, and the middle school had a positive trend toward recovery. And you can see actually that if you look at middle school 6 through 8, they held steady, which was interesting in 2021, and then had a nice little increase in 2022.
Can you, and sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
can you isolate any of that decrease? Like how much of that is owing to the writing issue?
Yeah, that isn't extrapolated out, but it has a lot to do with it because it's all factored in. Yeah, it's really interesting.
So it's 2 days of testing versus 1 day of testing.
There's there's a lot of pieces. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces too.
I'm surprised 2021's even in there. It's such a different year.
I know.
Like it's not even comparable.
Yeah, well, it's not factored in though, right? So they're not looking, they didn't use it for growth, we didn't, so, I guess some stories you kind of have to know where you were. you know, a little
No,
bit.
that's
So,
fine. I just
yeah.
think it was, whatever, I'll stop.
Yeah, I think. Wasn't good. And then here's science. So little change. I think, they said there was a little increase, but when I was doing my research, I didn't see too much of an increase. So, it's probably a quick percent, but, here is our science grades 5 and 8. Slight decrease in our science scores. And we have implemented this year, we're implementing a new science curriculum called Open SciEd, which is a program that DESE, it's an open source, which means you have access to everything for free. But we pay for professional development for the training for our middle school teachers. They went over the summer. We'll have more training. We're looking at some grants right now to keep that going. Obviously, we're going to keep it going, but to get some financial support to do that. And I've also put our name in as a letter of intent to pilot at the elementary level for science, because Open SciEd has high school, which I'm also going to be looking at with the high school departments, but the elementary is new, so they're still working on it. So they haven't vetted it all out yet, so we said we would be a test school. Try that out. And then here's grade 10. We did better than the state. And again, there's that legacy assessment. So it's a little bit different. And we are physics primarily, and it's in 9th grade when we do physics. Other schools do biology at 10th grade. And so there was a decrease in our scores this year, but we had high growth in ELA, and we had strong typical growth in our math. And again, we're looking at that. I'm working with the department chairs to drill down with their departments. They want to learn more about how to do this and how do we dig into this. So I'm working with all of them this month, actually, to dig into that and work with their departments. The data. And then absenteeism. So this is from the state again, and this talks about, obviously, the past couple of years have been really challenging. And the average student missed 11 days in 21, 15 days in 22, and 18% of all students missed 18 plus days in 21, and 28% missed 18 plus days. 18 plus days considered chronically absent.
How does this compare to our numbers?
I'll show you. So, and you can just see the increase. So the increase was 138%. In that here. And so, again, here's their numbers here. And here we are. So we had 330, we went up 330%, 108, 80% actually lower than state, 182%.
Wow. So this is like as of last year's, correct? Not this
Well,
year's, right?
Calendar, not academic years.
Last
Yeah.
year's.
Yeah,
That's calendar.
compared to 2019 to 2022.
The 2022
Yes, we don't have this fall's data.
No, but this was from last year.
Yeah,
So this is like
I'm
when
sure it's
the
been,
assessment.
it's probably.
So we're working, we're working with families and this year we're sending out absentee letters to families once they hit 5 days.
Having more meetings.
10 days,
during the
15
whole
days.
process.
Part of it's the law and also I think, it's important to make sure that kids are in school. We can't teach an empty seat, right? So, and that's what happened with COVID, right? We had empty seats because we had a pandemic.
Yeah.
We had children that were out
We
sick.
did.
So this number just kind of shows, that it's just a data point, but obviously if they're not here, it's harder for them to learn, right? So, but that was part of, we were in a pandemic, so.
So whenever I see it, so this is 330% increase. means
Yeah, they went from
3.3
0 to 33 students,
Zero to 33, well, that'd be an infinite percent, right?
but
Okay. So it was zero before?
33, 0 students were chronically
Zero.
absent,
Zero
Right,
for
chronically
18.
absent to 33,
had 18 or
22.
more days.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess, so that's all good. So so 0 to 33, that's infinite percent.
Right.
Is Deer Hill just double from, I guess, do you have the absolute
Yeah,
number? I think
what?
that's the next
I
slide.
did have them, and I apologize, I think I left them on my desk.
I don't need the specifics, but I mean, are we
Yeah.
talking, I guess, 0 to 33, we know, is like Deer Hill, like 12 to 24 or? in that
Yeah, it
range?
was, yes. And
You
then
try to mirror what the state, the way the
I
state.
did, so I
put it.
tried to figure it out the way.
Because the state did 139%, so.
Right,
we're
that's what
trying
we
to,
did, so
like,
that's why I
mirror
did it,
that.
yeah.
You know,
based on-
I have to,
I'm sorry, I had them and I thought I brought them up with me, so.
but what I worry about, frankly, is that some of this may be from illness and other things, but I also worry about that, with, kind of more institutionalized work from home. I think people have been a little more cavalier with taking kids out of school to do things. And I hope that's not the case, but that's.
That is the case.
Oh.
That's exactly what's happening.
So,
Are you seeing it? And
It's not isolated to combat.
right, so, yeah,
so we need a campaign to
I
stop
have
taking
3
kids out of
students in
school.
Florida today. 3 students I work with in Florida today.
so,
Or,
Because it's cheaper to fly.
right. You'll have a lot of people who go next week because it's a Veterans Day and they get cheaper.
And we
so-
get next Tuesday off, so people take
Yeah.
a week and a half
Good job.
vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so people's vacation calendars are more flexible, so.
But I think, I know, so I think, but I think, we've started the process. Like, there's my phone. That's okay. My battery died out, electricity, thank you so much. So, but I think that, it's just important data, to have, and we are sending letters out to families so that they are cognizant of what's happening. Sometimes parents don't even realize how many days out their child is really, when you have a flu, let's say you have a flu, that can knock you out for 5 days. And then you did happen to have a trip planned and that's another 5 days. So you've got 10 days now, your child hasn't been in school, unplanned, right? You didn't plan on the 5 days of the flu. That took your whole house down. So, anyway, but this is a data point for us. So, just
To give you a fun
aware.
example, so at our household, we got caught up in close contact COVID situations where
Right.
the state notified us a couple of times on contact tracing, and so we self-identified to say, all right, we're gonna test the kid. And we take one out for a day, and all of a
Right.
sudden that adds up too.
Right.
You get it.
And
yeah.
they didn't even account for that in here.
Yeah. Oh, they did
That
not.
No, they did not. Does not include staff absences or days missed as close contacts.
So it's the airline's fault.
So anyway, so it's a data point. But so, now what do we do with all of, we have this data, right? Obviously, we're drilling down into it. We're gonna look at, we're making itemized analysis of what's happening. We're gonna look for trends and patterns on standards. Are there standards that we're seeing that are not getting hit in multiple places? Like what's happening? So we're looking for the story behind the data, and we're using other data also to work with, right? Our iReady data, we're looking at our assessments that we do. But these are the things that we have done and will be doing. So we adopted the Bridges Math program at the elementary level. We added a part-time math ESP at Deer Hill to help support students with mathematics. We increased the math specialists at the elementary level to full-time. We had adopted Foundations Phonics programs, K through 3. We added 0.5 reading specialists at each elementary school. And some of this you obviously know, it's kind of like, these are all the things that are in place too that are going to help support us. We added a reading specialist at the middle school. We provided professional development last year at the elementary level, which focused on how students learn to read, the science of reading. Implemented the Lexia reading program, which is a personalized learning. And we created a comprehensive literacy plan with the elementary instructional leadership team, which allowed us to think about all the components that we need to make sure that we address. Implemented the iReady diagnostic assessment in reading and mathematics for grades K through 8, creation of a district assessment team. We have currently we're implementing the Heggerty Phonemic Awareness Program for K through 2, and that's going really, really well. Teachers like it. It's a very formulated, scripted, but it is, the kids and the teachers really get it. We're implementing Readers Workshop at Deer Hill, and we actually have many teachers that are, most of the teachers are doing it at Osgood. And we've purchased a codable readers for grades K through 2, along with, which I didn't even add in here, we got these other amazing books also for the K through 2. We're purchasing for 3 through 5, but the way the program had it, we had these gorgeous books that just came in for the younger students, along with the decodables are amazing. And then we have, we'll still be providing year-long embedded professional development for elementary staff in Readers Workshop. I already told you about, we're implementing Open SciEd at the middle school, which includes professional development, addition of a math specialist this year at the middle school. And at Deer Hill, we are piloting the iReady personalized learning math program for a grant that we received. We are in phase 1 for our curriculum review process for mathematics in grades 6 through 8, and also the arts K through 12. We're providing data analysis, professional development at all levels. I already part of that. Curriculum Associates came in and did that, and they'll do some more work with us in February. Creation of school-based data teams. So we're revitalizing some teams that were already at schools that had it and making a more streamlined, consistent process, and using the data dialogue process to really kind of make our data conversations more consistent. And then we'll be looking at phase 2, which for math and the arts, which will involve the implementation or revisions of new curriculum. And then professional development in math instruction for staff in grades 6 through 8. 6 through 12, sorry. Future adoption, hopefully, of maybe a math specialist at the high school. Continued professional development and literacy at the elementary level. That is not a one and done kind of process. We will stay connected to them for 3 to 5 years, possibly more, depending on how our literacy continues. And then propose that Title I funding be reallocated to better support reading at the elementary level. Those are some of the things that we'll be doing. Question. Oh, there is. Thank you. I couldn't see. I can't see because my screen is full.
Let's take a community question.
Yeah. So Melissa McDonough, 306 Fair Oaks Lane. The slide discussing Cohasset MCAS results for elementary students designated as high need is disturbing for all grades, but particularly 5th grade. What is being done to target interventions for these students? Absolutely. I think that we're working closely with Barbara Salonka to look at where are those areas of severe need that we need to address, and looking at analyzing the data, looking at what other pieces we need to do to support the students. It's very individualized because they are on IEPs, so it's hard to. Right. So, but I guess I'm thinking of all, right, if some of the students are on IEPs, the others will have to look and see what that really looks like. Is it, is it a student who is an English language learner? Could that be, you could have just one student who do that. We actually have a little.
We're also doing individual learning plans. for
Correct.
those
So
kids
any of
that-
those students, right?
Because clearly, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
That
Mrs. McDonough's.
Yeah, absolutely.
it is a disturbing
Yep.
slide, a
Absolutely.
disturbing data point.
Mhm.
And all those students deserve individualized plans.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is what we do with those students.
Right, right.
Uh,
Mrs. McDonough has a follow-up question. When can parents expect the results of this evaluation? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, sure.
Like evaluating the high needs group that you were just saying.
Oh,
we're doing.
looking
what-
at, oh.
So, you mean like what specifically were they struggling in? This is when you want to be able to talk to us, to Mrs. McDonough?
Yeah.
Is that what she
yeah.
probably means? So we identify the standard and actually what part they're
Right.
falling short in.
Right,
And then we would create, when I say individualized plans, I'm not talking about an ed plan, I'm talking about an MCAS remediation
Right.
plan.
right, exactly. And that also correlates with our iReady data too, because we'll look at that also. And so if there's particular standards that students have not acquired, and also you look at their iReady data and you're like, oh, yes. And then iReady has some interventions that are right there for teachers to grab and be able to support. So it's all part of our MTSS too. So that whole tiered support. So
Right, and to
Yeah.
spin this a little different way, if there's a really deep concern from a parent out there, or a guardian who
Absolutely.
sees their child's score and is alarmed by it, and if that is, and that's a fair,
Right.
if that's what we're talking, please, we should be reaching out to contact you
Right,
through our
absolutely.
MTSS process, but
Right.
also please reach out to your building
Absolutely.
principal, teacher,
Every teacher.
and we'll, we don't want to miss anything and miss any gaps. So, like, it is a data point. We use other data points. The way teachers are seeing your kids every day in front of them. Those are very important data points. They know your child, they know them as learners. They're getting to know them better as learners now, and they will by the end of the year, have a really thorough picture of them. So that I would absolutely say tap into that information.
And there's one more comment from Mrs. McDonough. And she said maybe that was the answer, meeting with Mrs. Sawanka, looking at the data, et cetera. I think,
I wasn't asked this at the end, but since Ms. McDonough brought it up, the fifth grade high needs group looked low, but also fifth grade, they look lower than third and fourth.
yeah,
I guess, what are have there any thoughts on what that means? Is that a peculiar class issue? Are there supports that should be put in at a class level? Just
those are
curious.
all good questions. So as we're digging into the data, the fifth grade teachers and principal, myself, we're going to look at where are those, what are we seeing for those patterns? Are there particular standards that they didn't get? And so that we need to make sure that we're teaching those. So we have to do more of an item analysis of it. And then we could determine then, do we need to have, intervention groups, like whatever's going to work at that building to support those students.
Dr. Scott, can you, to really tap into Nance's question, and I think it would be for the public, let folks know kind of what you've been doing in terms of data analysis around MCAS. I
Right.
think it's important to know that every teacher, we're talking to every single teacher
Right.
working with them
Mhm.
to help the students they have in front of them.
Right.
So you
Right.
can go ahead.
So all the teachers who have students that take MCAS, obviously they get all their data and they get rosters and they get itemized analysis, like they get the item and where their students went. And then what I've been doing is working with the principal and going into classrooms. So I went to Deer Hill and met each grade level in their common planning time, just did a quick overview because there's only so much time. But I'll also be going back to their staff meeting and do a day of dialogue with them. And they're going to dig into the data and they're going to look at it from different angles and there's a whole process to do that with them. The middle school has already had done theirs for math and for ELA. And we'll do some work with them in science. We did a lot of work with science at the middle school level last year around standards. And so, and you can kind of, you can see in their scores that was successful. I think when people, have that roadmap in front of them, it makes it easier to target your instruction. And then at the high school, I'm going into the department chair, I worked with the department chairs the other day, and then I'm going into all the department meetings this month in early December to go over the data analysis with them. And then on top of that, really working with principals to be able to understand how to run those data dialogues with their staff, and to build those consistencies and build those grade level, those building level data teams, so that they can not only look at MCAS data, but look at all data and figure out, what are we doing? Because really, you need to be able to understand the data to drive your instruction. You create your roadmap for where kids are doing really well. We're kind of focusing on where kids aren't doing as well, but it's really important to look at where it's going really, really well too, because what's happening in that classroom, and what are we doing that's making it successful? And then how do we share that out? How do we collaborate? And how do we make sure that whatever we're doing, we're trying to do it in different areas?
I think it's also important for people to understand that the way in which questions are formatted makes a huge difference on the MCAS as well. So for example, maybe kids understood a standard and they'd be able to hit a question that hits a certain standard, but it was done as a drag and drop and not as a multiple choice, or it was done as a short response and not as a multiple choice. So drag and drops are typically a lower scoring, like people do less well on a drag and drop matchup question than on a standard multiple choice question. But then a weird side effect of COVID is kids were doing more of that stuff online. And so like in our school, at least, our drag and drop numbers went up. So kids just know how to take a computer-based test better. It's not that they necessarily know the information differently. They just understand the vessel through which they're being tested better. So that's another element of it.
And our real process is to look at the data and not make assumptions about the data.
Right.
And not do no excuses,
Right.
that's the other, because it's really easy to do that. And say, well, they didn't have this, or that's not what we're doing. There's absolutely things that impact it, but that, it's almost like you're coming from an alien place and this data's in front of you. What do you see? And what's happening? Sometimes it's just so simple as, so we crammed that in right before the assessment because we actually weren't getting to it yet. So the kids didn't have it. It just wasn't attached to their brain enough. Or measure, whatever those things are. But I think it's really, so I think that's important. So yeah, we're gonna look at the data and we're gonna work with our teachers and have them become more comfortable. And they already are really comfortable. Like I went to their common planning time at the elementary level, and the questions after question after question. So let's do this, let's do that, and so I probably could have spent 4 hours with them. But they had to get back to kids. So and we're trying to be respectful of that and not pull them out of class time to do it. So we're kind of doing it in these like short spurts that I can get in there, work with them, but not take them out of the classroom. That's, we want them in the classroom with the kids. So the balance. So that's a good question.
Dr. Smalls, thank you. Questions from the committee, Mr. Carr?
But do you think it will self-adjust a little bit as the new numbers come in? I think it seems like we're catching up a lot, and it'll sort of, some of it will correct itself and some of it are challenges still.
Yeah, I think so. I think, we have to, it's gonna take us a little bit of time to catch up, right?
Yeah.
We had a very traumatic experience and we had interrupted learning. There's just all sorts of different things, so I think we have to just be, respectful of that, but that doesn't mean that we take our foot off the gas at all.
That's right.
We really need to make sure that we're being efficient with what we're doing. So doing these data dialogue allows us to do that, and to really be thoughtful about where we need to go, not waste time where we don't need to be. Right? Kids already know it. Good, awesome, great. Now, but they don't know this, so let's go.
It's a great strategy. Thank you.
Mr. Carey?
Thank you. This is great. There's 2 words that I always been saying is math specialists at the high school.
I put it on the list.
It's on the list. I think I've said it 100 times in this committee. I just think it just reinforces that we do need a math specialist, and that we think it's important to fund these programs. I mean, math specialists is something that we should have. And this, when it comes around budget time, these are the things that we need to advocate for our kids. I mean, we're having this conversation as we should, and it's not being not only said here, but you hear it on the news. What are we gonna do about these MCAS? So what are we gonna do? So I guess my question is to the community is, what are we gonna do as Cohasset? What are we gonna do here? Because there's not much we can do in other school districts, but there's something that we can do here. And that's to fully fund our schools, to give our educators the resources they need. And, I just think this just emphasizes what we're talking about. But we are a school district of good parents that are parenting and doing what they can to, give them, they're working hard here. I just think that we really got to focus in on how we can get these results better. And for the kids, fortunately, my kids are doing really well. And I thank the school district for that. I just think that what about the kids that aren't doing so well? And I'm so glad you guys are addressing that, because that's a concern that I've heard from some of my friends.
It's fair.
Their child didn't do so well. I think that's sometimes overlooked, and I'm glad that you guys are really focused, and dialed in on that, and I appreciate that.
Ms. Helms?
Thank you. A very thorough presentation. I think the most important part of this is the action, the future actions, and for teachers at a classroom level, it's so important to be analyzing this data in terms of what standards do I need to hit harder? How can I approach it differently? But for us as a committee, what actions can we take to make sure that we're supporting our faculty and staff in being able to do that? And so just what Mr. Kearney said, do we need more specialists? Can we figure out a way to get lower ratios? Like, is the programming that we've selected for math and reading and science the best? Is it helping to support writing about that subject matter? I think that that's our job, and having this list in front of us is very helpful. And you're right, when it comes to the budget, I am hopeful that we can support our schools in the way that's going to be the most productive, in a way that we can take action and be proactive. And yes, we've gone through trauma, but also there are gaps that need to be filled without COVID, and kids who need to be supported no matter what the global circumstances are. And so how can we best do that at our schools in our town? So it's a pretty comprehensive list, but we can probably push, right? And kind of come up with that wish list and try to get everything we can for the kids. So thank you for putting this together. It's all very good to consider.
Mr. McCollum?
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Scollins. It's a lot of work goes into compiling all this data and presenting it for us, so thank you. While it is only one data point, and while I'm not in general a huge proponent of standardized testing, in so much as the same test is offered to similar students at the same time in like schools, it does offer a fairly compelling picture of where our students are academically, in so much as you can even do that, right? Because I don't think standardized tests really, from an individual student's perspective, really tells the whole picture of the whole student. But when you're looking at it in a more generalized fashion, I think it can be pretty compelling. So I'm actually not concerned about the state average at all. What I'm much more concerned with is, the percentage of Cohasset students that are meeting expectations, okay, just meeting them, and also where we stand in comparison to like districts. And I find this information fairly concerning. Now, I don't want to be an alarmist, we have to, I think, Mrs. St. Ange was, I think the point is well taken, that, you need to look at this, you need to rationally react and logically react and implement some sensible changes in order to react to the data. That said, I do want us to be concerned about this. I mean, and I had asked you, there's a few points I want to raise, just highlight. I'd asked you to include the 2019 data because for two reasons. One is I wanted a control to compare against the pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, but also just look at where we were there. So we're taking the pandemic out of the equation in terms of the, justification for anything. And even in 2019, I don't think our scores were something we should be proud of. I think that, it concerns me. I would like to see us in all categories. And this is putting the high need subgroup aside, which I'm going to address in a second. That's especially concerning. And we're only as strong as, our most challenged student. But if you look, we should be striving for 80% or above for any, for me, in all categories, that's where we should be. I mean, forget the state percentage. That is, I think, what we should be striving for. And we're just not meeting that, even in 2019. We're much more on track if you look at the 2019 figures for the older kids. The elementary is concerning. And I don't know so when I look at the 2022 results on the slide where you compare it to the similar like districts, first and foremost, you had Cohasset as 77% as meeting or exceeding in grades 3 through 8. Am I correct in the way you calculated that is simply taking the percentages from grades 3 through 8 and then averaging them? I did that, I came up to 68%. So I did it twice. So I don't know if that's accurate or not. And I would err on the side of saying you're probably right and I'm probably wrong, but I don't know if that's accurate. But even putting that category aside, the ELA for 3 through 8, we're in the lower 50% in all of those categories of those 7 similar like districts. So Cohasset, Dover, Duxbury, Hingham, Marshall, Norwell, Situate in math 3 through 8, science 5 and 8, ELA 10, math 10. We're in the lower 50% for those. And I think we're probably on the higher regardless of whether that average is correct in the ELA 3 through 8. But and that's only if you're including the older kids percentage, it drives the percentage up. But if you just isolate that to the elementary levels, it's pretty staggering. In the elementary levels, we're at just under 59% for ELA and 61% for math, meeting or exceeding expectations for a general ed population. That's completely unacceptable. And I'm not saying it's your fault or our teacher's fault. It's just a data point that we need to really respond to with some urgency.
It's diagnostic.
That's right. And it is revealing a problem. And then with the high needs subgroup category, I mean, this almost makes me want to cry. So 5th grade ELA, 4%. That means 96% of our high needs students are not meeting expectations. I mean, my God, right? So and I think that you have taken steps, as both of you have taken a lot of steps in terms of literacy, especially for those on IEPs or, those students that would fall into this category. So I am optimistic that we'll see a positive uptick.
Yeah.
But it should be fairly significant in 2023.
Yes, but I do want to make a statement though around students who are on IEPs.
Yep.
Right, so a student who has a specific learning disability often is 1 year to 2 years behind because of the disability. So one of the most important things to do when we're looking at those students is what is their growth? What are their goals? And really that growth piece, because sometimes you have students who have a specific learning or have a disability, and their growth is really, really strong. Their achievement, it goes up, but for them to be able to hit that benchmark of meeting the standards is challenging because they're on IP.
Okay.
So when we drill down on it, and I didn't do that specifically,
Point well
that's something I
taken.
would do here, but when we look at specific students, we look at their growth. And so I started to do that with teachers and say, okay, so let's grab these kids, let's look. And some students had really nice growth, their achievement scores were still really low. That's what you're looking at here,
That's a fair point.
okay?
That's a
I'm not
fair point.
justifying anything,
No,
I want
no,
you to know
no,
that,
that's
but this is
that's
still
a
not good,
relevant
it's
point.
still not good.
It's a relevant point
Right.
though, but so it
Okay.
brings me to one of my questions is why isn't there an SGP category in the high need subgroup?
I just didn't add it in.
Oh, you just, okay, you know if there was like
Yeah.
a reason, okay.
Yeah,
Because that could be a little bit more reassuring,
Right,
right?
yeah,
Because what you
yeah,
just said.
yeah.
So maybe
Right.
maybe there is a
Yeah.
decent SGP, right? And,
Yeah,
because
it's
what
so-
you just said is really
so
interesting, but
Student-specific, I know, it's so
it's-
student-specific, yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still objectively concerning, but
Right,
what you
like-
said is very relevant. And so I'd be interested to see that. I think that's maybe more telling.
Yeah.
In that subgroup. So I'm saying this to be critical, just because I'm personally very proud of what some of what we've accomplished in recent years. I think that we're taking great strides to improve this district in a lot of different ways, not just from a teaching and learning perspective, but so I'm guarded about it, but we need to make sure that, like, I want this to be a motivating factor here, to ensure that we continue paying attention to the right places. And I think that you can see, actually, it looks like the math curriculum is already starting to pay dividends
It is.
in some levels.
May I add one point that kind of
Of course.
piggybacks on what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
I also think it's really important to draw attention to what Dr. Scollins was saying about the writing portion of the MCAS, because if you look at data and look at a student's score and say, oh, they were so close, they got partially meets, but they were 4 points off from meeting, and then you look at their open response essay and they got a 0 or a 1, that was the tipping point. That was why they didn't hit it. Maybe they got 1 or 2 other questions wrong,
right?
But they lost those 4 points, and it's getting a 1 instead of a 5 or
Right, yeah.
whatever. That is what kept them from meeting. So I think that writing element,
Right.
for not everybody, but for many people,
It was,
can mean
it was,
the difference between two categories.
it could. And back
Still
to,
important, though.
back to the,
That's why I'm bringing it up,
Well,
and
okay.
she brought it up as an important factor
I
that
see.
they're looking at.
right.
Okay.
But I think that, when you see it, it's like, yes, 77% met or exceeded, and there's probably a lot of kids who were just like squeaking
Yeah,
in
bubble,
at the
yeah.
top of partially meets,
Right.
but had a lower writing score. And so that's important piece that you're already looking at.
And so, and back to being able to put the growth in, actually, I'm sorry, they don't calculate it out for you. So it's student specific,
Oh.
right? So if I'm,
Okay.
right, I forgot about that. It's,
Okay.
and I think, yeah, and it's, yeah, 'cause I'm looking at numbers. Yeah, yeah.
We do have a community.
So it's not possible to,
I have, yeah, I could get it though. I can get it, but I have to, it's not public information.
all right,
It's
well,
student specific. Like
but you can
individual.
get it and then turn it into a statistic. No?
What?
Like taking, if I took individual, if you take students,
Like average.
But then again, what value would there be in
And an
that number?
average and SGPs
Okay.
with that.
Yeah, I could do
Just
that.
take
I could
individual.
do that. Yeah, I guess yeah, I mean, I guess I always think of it as so individual on that growth piece.
Right, and then is it valuable because if you're comparing it to,
Okay, well, I guess I would say, how much, what are we looking at for growth for kids, right? So for any student, but in particular our high needs,
Okay.
what's their growth? If their growth is in the low, then, or very low, we're having a very serious conversation.
And I think it's important to
so
look
maybe
at
we
those
should.
students
look at
specifically.
that.
Yeah.
But remember, the data, the overarching data, the general, that's not just general ed data isolated, that's data of all of our students. Right, so the high needs group is in there as well.
In which part, Dr. Saul?
So we just correct?
Yes, we just.
Isolated
pulled
the
that
high
out.
needs group. We didn't isolate the group that isn't high needs. So when you look at the group, the overarching data, that high needs data is also in there, just so you know.
Oh, okay, so,
So, but I get your
Yeah, so you see
point,
the
but I
total.
wanted to make sure you don't think it's a tale
okay,
of
so
two
the
stories.
percentages I said earlier
Right.
wouldn't have been driven down because they would have already accounted for the high
They're
needs.
in-
group.
They're already in.
They're
there.
in
Okay, that's good,
Okay,
because
okay.
they're already too low in my opinion, except for the ELA for the older kids, 6 through 10, which is 77%, that's pretty solid. Math though is 59%. I mean, so, so you got elementary ELA and math, you got 6 through 10
Yes. this-
ELA and math. There's 4 of those 4, 3 of them are lower than 62%.
I-
Meeting exceeding.
I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think we both do. I think the thing about it is, what we're trying to make sure we do is create actions that reflect the data that shows where we're falling short. And
Sure.
and what I believe we're on that right track. And this is part of the discussion as we move forward, is to make sure that we are and that we're attending to these needs. And, it's our job to make sure the teachers are. And so, we completely accept that expectation.
Yeah, so, and that's why I said, I mean, we need to look at this and move forward. And I think that you have been.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure, because I know that there's positive things to look at too, okay? But this is vastly negative in my view, and I want us to recognize that and move forward in a very purposeful manner from this. And it's just one data point, but I think it's a fairly compelling one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's an important
So
one.
I just wanted to make that point, and I wanted to sort of point out some of the glaring deficiencies here that I found. So, but okay, so those were my comments, and I think that you have both taken steps in both, our strategic actions, but also in, more specific, maybe building goals and classroom goals and I think that you have taken some steps. And it's on the action slides where we are addressing some of the needs that are identified
And more
here.
will come up. These are what we have right
But-
now, but as we drill
So
down more.
we do have a community question that might tie in there. It's
Okay.
from Ms. McDonough. I think she's commenting to when we said, is it okay?
That's it.
Yeah, just 'cause
That's
last
number three, yeah.
application.
Okay, all right. So she said, instead of giving in that those kids are 1 to 2 years behind, why can't we look to support them more? And I think that is, I don't think what you were.
Oh, I didn't mean,
saying.
I wasn't giving a pass to that at all,
Yeah.
or saying that, no, I was just kind of trying to give stories behind some of the data maybe.
But here's what I would say, we have Mrs. Swankers coming next time. And I think it might be an appropriate conversation for us all to have about, not that she owns this alone, we are
All of us,
completely on her team, but to talk a little bit more about what we've seen with our high needs group, as she is Director of Student Services.
Absolutely.
And what are we working on with that group in terms of what the data says? And again, it's very much MCAS is it's needed to tell us how we're approaching the standards. How well are we doing approaching the standards? And that itself gives us some post guidance to make sure we're supporting them. So to Mrs. McDonough's question, no, we are not saying, we're not giving that as they're 1 or 2 years behind. It is explanatory, but like you said earlier, we're not doing that. We're looking at the data as data, and we're trying to support them and build supports to provide that support. It was just in response to maybe not seeing the full picture, I think.
Right, yeah, I didn't,
And I don't want to be overly negative. I don't want to detract from the good things that the two of you are doing. And
No.
the district.
no, but
I do, I feel strongly that I do think that you two are the best suited, for your jobs and we're very happy with you, but this is objectively concerning, and I think we're on the same page that we need to move forward.
We knew, I mean, I think we're not alone in bracing for impact with
Right.
this. But as you pointed out, there are some like districts who did better than we did. There are some that didn't do as well as we did, but your point is.
But there are more that did better, and that's what I don't like.
Well, that we didn't share, okay, so I would say generally, yeah, you're right. But we didn't share all the DART districts. We didn't share all the local districts. We picked, and we didn't pick 7 that clearly we were,
No.
to really make that statement, you're gonna have to parse it out and look at it. I think you're probably right, but I also think we're in a competitive DART district where you can see that they're at the tops of the state, as
For sure,
apparent.
and that's all I care about.
Right.
That's why I don't care about the state as much.
right.
I care about
Right.
those dark schools because that is the
Yeah, I'm
competitive.
not making excuses. I'm just saying that what's
I know.
on the screen, what's on that slide isn't the full picture
Right.
of DART schools. But even having put the full picture, you're correct.
Right.
Because I've looked at the full.
Right. And I would say, and just one nice positive thing. I mean, there are some, there are some pockets of positive. One of the nice things is that middle school and their ELA.
Performing well.
And they really worked hard. I think, they kind of rank all, they can kind of look at all stuff, but did so well against other middle schools, 6 to 8. So that was really
That's
accomplishment
true.
for that. So that's
Yep.
really good. So, but, and Mr. Melvin, teachers and department have been working really hard, looking at the standards, looking at how they're going to continue to improve. So.
If we got
you know,
those
all of
rates
us-
in all of our levels, we'd be killing it.
Yeah, and we are, I
We'd be
mean,
killing it.
and we approach all this as a team. So
Thank goodness the
we're
kids went to
trying
Austin
to
and Deer
support.
Hill and learned everything they did there so they could get to the middle
It's
school
a,
and do that
yeah, it's a
well.
pre-K through, it's a pre-K through 12, and it's that shared responsibility that's so important, because so often, people think it's the test in that year, right? But it's the collective, it's for everybody. And in particular, when you get up to 10th grade, right? So everything that we've done all along the way to get those students. So, we do have to look at that, and we do have to make sure that, what are we doing to make sure that our kids have, that they are learning what
Yeah.
we're expected to do.
We
So,
owe it
yeah,
to the kids.
that's our job. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. McCall. Anything else?
Nothing.
So Ms. McCall said a lot of things that I would say. I guess I want to build on Ms. Salenge's comment and kind of tying it to Ms. McCall's comment. You know, there's good stuff in here. There's also stuff that we need to focus on. I love that you came to this with like 3 pages of actions. This is great. You've got some ideas. You're taking it seriously. You're looking at it. What I want to do, and what kind of the impetus of this agenda structure is, having teaching and learning on there, is to continue to have touch base points on not only what you're doing with respect to these bullet points, which ones are working, which ones aren't, which ones are implementable, which ones you find out you can't, but also, and this is going back into this interview, what do you need from the committee? What can we do to help? Whether it's, I know Mr. Hume was all for public awareness and getting people to pay attention, getting people to keep their kids in the school. Whether there's things we need to fight for with respect to funding, whether there's battles we need to fight with the town. We can really use that direction from you. So, let's use this agenda item E as places to get specific thoughts where we can help you, and kind of specific updates on how these action items are going. Because I do think this is really important. One of my anxieties is that we live in a fairly well-to-do district and people have options. And, I think the public schools should be the core of everyone. And I don't want people seeing MCAS scores and getting concerned that they're not getting what they could get elsewhere and doing other things. So let's make sure everyone knows that we are paying attention to this and we are getting better, and we are going to have plans and we're going to do things. So that's my request. So.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate that.
Nicely presented, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anything else before we go on to agenda item F, budget resources and governance? I think the rest of the agenda is not as heavy. So hopefully we can move swiftly.
Yeah, no, the answer is no.
Great.
I mean, no to, not no to moving swiftly, no to. no further,
I appreciate the clarification. I know we all do. So I think we'll quickly touch on transportation. I think Ms. Owen to talk a little bit about where we are on transportation. Any transportation issues other than buses, which we talked about a little bit?
Transportation, well, our last trainee is going for their test tomorrow, so, God willing, she passes her test and we have another bus driver.
Yes.
The other thing that, good news is we're finally putting our 7D van, to use. We've got a 7D driver, so, they're driving into Brookline.
Yes.
Brookline every day, so that's good. Other than that.
The 14th, don't we have another driver possibly coming on the 14th too? Did I read that wrong? From Ray? Thought we were gonna possibly have a driver on the 14th.
They pass their test.
No, but
We have
tomorrow.
one passing their test tomorrow, and then I think we have someone coming, we have one, possibly 2 coming into training, but one already has a CDL
Right.
They just have to get their bus certification. That's on the 14th, they're coming. And then the second person is starting from scratch, but we're trying to build our team as best we can.
Yeah, and that will build flexibility. So it's this, there's a lot of good information coming our way that makes us feel that the issues that we've been having with, one driver goes out and we have to double up, won't be a long-term thing.
No.
So
we're
that's
gonna
encouraging.
continue.
Because we really don't want to get into a situation where we're doing that. It's very taxing on parents and kids.
Next, transportation,
That's probably it.
probably it.
Food service, and
Food service, no, it's-
we have our meeting set.
we are going on November 22nd, I
Second.
believe,
Yeah,
to have lunch at Deer Hill.
Deer Hill.
We talked about, just, is that okay?
It's supposed to be a subcommittee
Yep.
update.
Yeah, this, we'll come to that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
I jumped it.
Yeah.
Anything else on kind of food service from the administration side?
The vending machine is a hit, big hit. There
Oh,
are lines waiting for it every day.
Yes,
awesome.
we did talk to some students
for
today
you.
at the wellness
For us.
committee, and they were all
Yeah.
about it. It was so, yeah, they.
Paul Community Memorial Vending Machine.
Yeah,
May
It's
I ask
awesome.
a vending machine question? Is it limited to kids who go here? Because my kids and I tried to use it when we went to the volleyball game and put in birth dates, which are pretty recent for my kids, and they couldn't get anything from the vending machine.
If you put in, I believe, cash.
No, I'm not looking for cash, Sue. I wanted my free meal for the first use of the vending. Is what we're looking at.
That's a good.
Is that only for middle and high school students?
No.
Because
But
when
I
you start,
don't
we
know.
followed the directions.
To
I
ask
know this
that.
is personal, but.
No, I had to say, I was on a phone call. I went up last week and tried to use it, and I have a PIN number.
Yeah, good.
But then it asked me for my birth date, so I put it in going, well, I know food service director didn't enter me into her system with my birth, so it wouldn't take it. So I tried it 4 or 5 times, and the students were standing there laughing, and one gentleman did offer to buy me my water, because I was like, no, I've got to call Marilyn and find out how I can use it, because no, it's open to anyone. I just don't know.
Because we've advertised this free meal thing, because we were told.
I don't know what the secret
And I was like,
is.
girls, get whatever you want. It's free.
No,
And I also pay for their school bus,
Yeah,
so I
do
guess
you know,
everything's on me.
have others, this is terrible when the glitches are happening in school.
I just didn't know if we were too young, if we weren't old enough to access the machine. Just thinking when kids are at basketball games and attending sports, it's
Yeah,
fun.
but Sue, there are people getting the free lunches that we've talked about, correct?
Oh, yes,
All right,
yes.
good.
So it's gonna be a secret, which I just haven't called down to find out. When it asks for your birthday and you're not a regular,
Yeah.
what do you put
The
in?
machine has to like you.
It didn't like my
I'm just-
birthday either.
Same.
So I got nothing.
Yeah, 2014 was a no-go, so.
That's too
And
funny.
no, I will find out
Printout was helpful.
how to get around that little
Yeah.
glitch.
All right.
Other than that, no, everything's.
Any report, there's a school
No
facilities
report.
committee? No report.
Well, there was a meeting, we did have a meeting. It's just basically just an update, still waiting. And what are the future?
Well, this is the school facilities, this is the new school facilities.
Yeah, we had a
Yes.
meeting last week.
Oh, okay.
There's need to be in a holding pattern.
Yeah, that's all, I just wanted, and we try to put some dates together for the next up and coming.
So is the new school, the school facilities committee, that's the new school facilities?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a meeting.
Okay, super, I just wanted, because you're on so many committees.
Yeah,
You're
Craig
really,
and I are on that together, and we just had a
okay.
quick meeting just to say, basically, we're gonna hold.
Got it. And MSBA, just so everyone knows, because Tad's in here, we have not heard from them yet. We are expecting in the next few weeks to hear.
All right, so then moving on to school committee, subcommittee and liaisons. I'll just go around, and open up to committee members. Mr. Carney, reports from your committee.
Category liaison, the select board mentioned about a master plan for Milliken Field. Are you aware of that?
Well, we do have meetings coming up with the select board in town to
Okay.
discuss fields. I don't know the specifics quite yet, but I would imagine that it's got something to do with Milliken. So,
Okay, there's some concept of master plan.
yeah, there was a field master plan
Okay.
that we've been in
I know it's not our
discussions with
field.
for some time. So I'm gathering that's it. And we're gonna move to the next phase with them, coming up shortly. So,
What I understand is that there's a field study that we are short on
Yeah.
fields as a town.
Yeah.
And so they were looking at various options, how to close that gap. A lot of them are budget constrained. So one of the options originally was doing some work with Milliken to put in a pickleball court, redo the tennis courts, and perhaps even turf. And then they moved on to something else. We actually talked a little bit about potentially doing a new field here on the, not here, but in the Deer Hill area.
Okay.
And that has been refocused now that we're back at Milliken. And then what Dr. Sullivan's talking about is we're also going to try and work with the town a little bit on seeing if there's a way to enhance the cooperation between the towns and the schools on use of existing fields. And so maybe we can stretch our field budget in that way. So a few things going on, but thanks for bringing it up.
It came up, I just wanted to.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
phenomenal.
There was something about concession building and restrooms over there, would that be us?
That's not us, I don't think. That's the,
So it sounded to me like this might be another category of somebody's planning to do something with that field.
yeah.
I'll follow up and see what the thing is, but
What I understand about the concession thing, is they need about $100,000 to finish the concession stand.
Okay.
Because what their original plan was to get containers to come in and they could build all the containers, kind of like that beach bar at Hull.
Yeah.
Those things. But then the container got lost or something, and then inflation, and it like doubled in price, and then it wouldn't meet code. And so they actually had a window in the building and they filled it in because they were relying on this container. Anyway, long story short,
Okay.
we're one convenience store short.
I'll continue to monitor it. I'll
Appreciate that.
Or something, yeah.
Thank you.
no, thanks, I look forward to the
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. So, Mr. Kearney, any?
Yeah, we had a wonderful wellness committee meeting today. We have two new students on the committee. It was very informative. We went back to see where we were and how far we've come. And
Our goals for the year
we
and
had 3 goals that we're focused on. And one is our mission statement. We've divided it into subcommittees. And the other one is, the other two are, one is to develop a website that's more of a community
Look at our
page.
web-
So
Yeah.
we had talked about, like, you know, where do I sign up, like a question mark?
Kind of a community board.
Like a
Yourself,
community
yeah.
board. So that, I'm real excited about that. And then also too is the, and which I'm on the subcommittee of the after-school programs that we've been talking about for the gym to stay open till 6 at night. And the kids were really excited about it. So it's a really good committee. I
Yeah,
think we
and
had.
it's, we couldn't have, everybody wasn't there because some of our people coach and then there were some other things, our parent reps were, couldn't be there, but yeah, it was a nice, we got a lot done in our
Yeah.
not quite 50 minutes that we were
Yeah.
there. And actually, things that we've done because of the wellness work that we did with the consultant, we really kind of have put all the pieces in place that you're supposed to have. So we had students last year and family members for the first time on the wellness committee. And then this year, we have a co-chair and a secretary. And our co-chair is Tara Noyce, the assistant principal at the high school. And our secretary is a sophomore.
Oh.
Yep, Nora, right?
Yeah.
And so she said she would do it. So she's
Awesome.
gonna be the secretary.
Love it.
Isn't that amazing? So
That's great.
they were unbelievable. They were so open. And it actually turned out really well because their sophomores are going through a lot of the wellness and health curriculum right now. So they were just in it. They were really, really great.
It'd be
So-
really nice to have maybe those representatives present to the superintendent.
Absolutely. We have 2 other, so we have 3 other
They're
student
often
reps.
asking about that type of.
Yeah,
So-
so we have other student reps, a couple of them are involved in sports, so Lucy, who was on there last year, I think she's on the field hockey team, so she couldn't be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we have a middle school voice too, so.
We also talked about the lack of PE time.
We did talk a little bit
Adding
about,
that in
so,
elementary schools.
right, so we're
PE time,
compliant,
so-
I think we're compliant, but there are some recommendations,
Right,
so we
right.
want to look into that and see.
Yeah, I
what
think
that's all
Mr.
about.
Dacus was great at that too. He's really concerned about it. He's a kid's favorite, so, yeah, Mr. Dacus.
And parents' favorite.
Yes, so,
Yeah.
yeah, and the next, just FYI, the next meeting is on December 7th, and we're gonna coordinate, and food services on. We also talked about trying to get some cooking classes in college.
Yeah, we talked about some interesting things.
Yeah.
We do have middle school, middle school, we do have some,
Yes.
classes for.
Yeah, they
Right,
did
that we were
talk about
talking
that,
about.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, it's a very action oriented. It felt like for a couple of years, we were like, oh,
Yeah,
like-
putting everything in play,
like
yeah.
trying to get it, so it felt like, but last year we got that.
Yeah.
We got our policy done,
Yeah, policy,
and
yeah.
then we got
Yeah.
our vending machine. So, yeah, now I feel like it's just like, let's.
We do have a community comment. It is backtracking a bit, but I think it was my fault. I missed it because it was the time, it's timestamped in the part where I should have.
All right.
And if I can read it, if that's
Yes.
okay, it's from Megan Berry, who's from 11 Cad Lane. And her question, Sue, I guess it's to you, is when will Stop Finder be live with bus tracking?
Good question.
I thought it was.
No, it's not working.
It's not, I did.
It's a great question. Stop
The,
by, it's not working.
When
I think
did-
that,
when did it
I
start?
think they're talking about the actual map, on the map.
The location of the bus.
No, I totally know what you're talking about. No one has informed me that it didn't work.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Barry, because that is an issue. I don't know why I didn't think of it.
Hopefully we'll be back up tomorrow.
Can I ask, maybe you
Has it
could,
been down a while?
Yep.
Ms. Barry, yeah, how long, has it ever worked for you, Ms. Barry? You can just respond if you don't mind.
Is
It
there
has
anything
worked.
in place that's like alerts you? People aren't
She
getting.
said no.
It has worked.
So I think this is a good community action because I wasn't under the, I was under the understanding it was working. So I think we need to make sure,
No, I'll check first thing in the morning.
It
that we
updates the routes, tells you departure and arrival times. And it shows the maps, and it shows your location and the school's location,
But not
and a bus stop's location for your child. It doesn't show where the bus is, which is the major
That's
thing.
the
that
big
it's-
thing about that.
But it tells you when it's leaving bus stops. So like, so when we're waiting, it tells us like on Jerusalem Road or when it's there. But Sue, I think we had talked about that and the map, that we didn't want to turn on the map because of problems that other districts have where people started running after the bus or something. Is that what?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Let me check.
maybe, well, can we do this?
That's the
Can we,
first I've
can we
heard
look
of it.
into it and then maybe give an update in the newsletter?
Yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
great because that would
Hopefully it will be back up.
make
and
perfect
running.
sense. Thank you for bringing that to me. It says,
Yeah.
it doesn't ever show where the bus is, which is what you said. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barry.
That's like, that's the best part about it.
That was the whole point. Which we didn't want.
It's good. We get about half of what we want out of it. We want, we're
And I actually-
paying for the whole thing. We want the whole thing. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Ms. Allen, anything from you,
Yes,
committee
please.
liaison wise?
Yes, one quick question for Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
When I was at the Deer Hill School Council, it was just brought up as a part of a conversation. I think in the past, maybe, I can't remember, and this predated me, if there's Deer Hill representation on the superintendent advisory committee, or there's been talk, I remember we've talked about it at some point, or there was plan to
No, we
expand it.
have, we've done that when we've had them come to a couple of meetings.
Yeah.
So we can look at that again for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be just a nice time to explore it again and.
Yeah.
And include that voice, and it came up
Sure.
and I said I would ask, because I remember having that conversation, so.
Yep, yep.
I mean, obviously not like every single time, but.
Right.
No, you had a fifth grader on.
We did.
We did the.
Yeah, we had
first
them
year, we
meet,
had
and they met like a
first
couple of
year.
times.
Yeah, they came.
So, yeah, we need to, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think just bring it back. That'd be great.
Mr. McClellan, anything good?
Food Service and Nutrition Subcommittee meeting November 22nd, I think 11:50. We're doing the Deer Hill lunch this time. So we're continuing our tour of the schools and the lunch programs to try and drill down on our needs and what we're doing right. We're gonna keep posted.
On my end, with Ms. St. Ange on policy committee, you have put forth some times that work for a meeting and I have not, so this is on me. I will get back to
We'll figure it out.
all relevant people on that. And then I'm doing the same thing with the middle school council. So I need to get my scheduling intact, but nothing else to report other than my scheduling difficulties. That I'm challenging to work with. So with that, we'll move into school committee governance. There are no topics that were not reasonably anticipated by the chair.
I believe, again, difficult to work with, theme, Mr. Carr, I believe you've sent me some minutes that I did not include in the packet, which I will include for the next time, so I appreciate
I was
you.
behind and I caught up and I have two more to not be behind anymore. And so I will finish those
I'll
this
make a
week.
note for Jennifer too.
So they just send them out to Jen.
So I sent them, I think, to the chair and to Pat, and I think copy Jen, just to have somebody have a look at it. before.
Yeah, there was, I was going to look at it.
Yeah, no problem. I could use the help and I'll send it to Lydia too. There was one where the power went off and I was away.
Oh, yeah, send that to me and I'll
Okay,
fill in my notes.
Oh, yeah, we lost internet connection.
That was, you missed, that was the best part. That
I was in London and I
Yeah.
was on the phone and.
It went dark, then this whole place went off the hook. It was just party time.
And, but anyway, that's where you'll see there's a bunch of question marks at the end of that, because I had no idea what really happened at the end of that,
So
so.
I think that was what I was saying, and this will solve everything.
And if you
And
could
then
fill
it
it,
went.
that'd be great. I'm sure it was a robust conversation.
So thank you for that. So no approval minutes to vote on. I'll open it up to the committee, whether or not anything from this meeting that you'd like to see a future agenda item for the next meeting or.
Could I mention one that I just, at some point convenient for the chair and for Patrick, if it's possible. And I always preface this because people watching at home might think we have an issue and we do not have an issue in this category, but could we have a discussion at some point about legal strategy? We have no big issue, but I think, sometimes it leads to things that involve money and negotiations and a little bit of strategy. I don't know if this can be an executive session or if it has to be an open, but could we, at a time convenient, have a discussion around legal?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Okay, just no particular rush, but I think these are important things to try to figure
And
out.
that would be executive session.
That would be
In fact,
executive
there is a itemized,
There's a number for that.
a number for that, yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
I think I knew the answer, but I figured I'd throw it out there.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, I was hoping that we could, with sports changing right now, that we could ask Mr. Rotundi to come in here and
Yes.
have, I'd like to see the participation report, exactly what kids are doing, what kids aren't doing, what.
Yes.
And, try to motivate, no kid left behind so that we can, schedule. Some of the parents are asking for certain things that I think, and nothing to do with the turf. I wouldn't want that to be,
Oh, no,
we've all
I
talked about
right,
that.
I get you.
And again, and I do want to, as a parent of students that participate in sports, he did a good job with this, for what he had to deal with as far as the program, the school, buses, and, I just want to give a shout out to the athletics department. That said, I do want us to have I just want to know like what we used to do.
Totally
X
fair.
amount of kids, because then we could make, there is talk about like, that we mentioned on, I think on the wellness today, about like, there's girls' sports that we're not having enough basketball players during certain grades. And there's how do we work the rec department to try to get that information out there so that a child that needs to participate in something, maybe it's not sports, maybe it's a math club, but at least sign up for something.
Yeah.
So.
We had
Great
actually,
suggestion.
that was a follow-up request from Lydia regarding volleyball, and I had said, I've already talked to Steve. So we just determined that this, as you can see, this was an agenda, and it wasn't appropriate to put it on this one,
Great
but
suggestion. We'll get.
Yeah,
we'll get-
because
we have
winter
some.
sports, fall sports, winter sports are coming up, and there's a lot of concern about it. Just a freshman basketball team, they have ample enough kids trying out. So like years
Yeah.
past, if you were even to make the team, you'd go on as a JV and then have to play, and there's a need for that. Just my son is a freshman. I don't even know if he wants to play basketball. I know his friends do, and I coached them, so
Yeah.
there is a lot of enthusiasm.
fair points.
St. Ange, anything on your mind that might be a good agenda item?
I guess just kind of in follow-up to our conversation tonight about MCAS, when Mrs. Sarwanka comes, she can really, her new format is terrific, but in addition to that, speak to the high needs results that we're seeing and how we're turning it from her point of view.
Great.
an SGP. Okay.
Sorry, SGB?
I'll show you. I can show you.
Mr. Mr. McClellan, anything from?
Just an experiential or PBL spotlight on the line.
All right. Only thing for me is already mentioned, just agenda item E. Let's keep on the MCAS reaction and what's working, what's not, and where this committee can help you fill any gaps. All right, there's no reason to move into executive session. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made. There is a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.